The first thing I noticed after Eric died was how quickly the vultures descended. Not the metaphorical kind, the designer-clad, perfectly manicured variety that wore Chanel No. 5 and called themselves family. I'm Sadie, and 3 days ago I lost my husband. Today I'm watching his mother and sister commandeer my home like it's their divine right. "Darling, these curtains simply must go," Josephine announced, running her fingers along the silk panels Eric and I had chosen together. "They're far too modern for a proper estate home." I stood in the doorway of my own living room, clutching my coffee mug like a lifeline. The funeral was barely over, and already they were redecorating. Blair, my sister-in-law, was sprawled across my favourite armchair, scrolling through her phone with practised disinterest. "The curtains stay," I said quietly but firmly. Josephine's head snapped towards me, her steel-grey hair catching the morning light. "Oh, sweetheart, you're clearly not thinking straight. Grief does terrible things to one's judgment. I said they stay." My voice didn't waver. Blair finally looked up. "Mum's right, you know. This whole house needs a proper renovation. It's what Eric would have wanted." My fingers tightened around the mug. Funny, considering Eric picked everything in this room himself. "Well, he always did have questionable taste," Blair muttered, loud enough for me to hear. Before I could respond, Madison appeared behind me, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. Thank God she'd stayed after the funeral. "Sadie, honey, Benson's here to see you. Something about the estate papers." Josephine practically levitated from her seat. "The family lawyer? I'll handle that." "Actually," Madison cut in smoothly, "he specifically asked for Sadie." In Eric's study, Benson looked uncomfortable, his usual confident demeanour replaced with something more hesitant. "Mrs. Kent, there are some matters we need to discuss privately." "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of family," Josephine interrupted, having followed us in uninvited. Benson's eyes met mine briefly. "Perhaps we should reschedule." "No," I said firmly. "This is my house, and I'd like to speak with Benson alone." The look Josephine gave me could have frozen hell. "Darling, you're clearly overwhelmed. Let me handle the legal matters. After all, Eric would want me to handle my own affairs," I cut in, surprising myself with my steadiness. "Please leave." After they finally left, Benson lowered his voice. "Josephine called me this morning. She's pushing for temporary control of the estate, citing your emotional instability." My stomach dropped. Can she do that? "She's trying, but there's something else." He hesitated. "Eric left specific instructions about his personal safe. Said you needed to check it immediately after the funeral." The safe. I'd almost forgotten about it, hidden behind the painting in our bedroom. Eric had never shared the combination with me, claiming it held boring business documents. Later that night, after Josephine and Blair had finally retired to their guest rooms, I stood before the painting. The combination came to me suddenly. Our wedding date. Simple, sentimental, Eric. Inside was a single envelope, thick and heavy. On the front, in Eric's familiar handwriting, were the words that made my blood run cold. "If they come, play the video." My hands trembled as I held the envelope. Even from beyond the grave, he'd known. He'd known exactly what would happen. A floorboard creaked behind me, and I quickly tucked the envelope into my robe pocket. Blair stood in the doorway, wearing one of my silk nightgowns. "Looking for something?" she asked, her voice honey-sweet with malice. "Just remembering," I replied, closing the safe and replacing the painting. She sauntered closer, twirling in my nightgown. "It's funny, isn't it? How life changes so quickly. One day you're the lady of the manor, and the next—" She trailed off meaningfully. I met her gaze steadily. "The next? The next, you're just the widow who needs help managing it all." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Don't worry, Sadie. We'll take good care of everything." As I lay in bed that night, the envelope burning a hole in my bedside drawer, I realised something that should have terrified me, but instead filled me with an odd calm. This wasn't just about grief anymore. This was war. And my late husband had apparently left me ammunition. Madison arrived early the next morning, bringing coffee and a sympathetic ear. We sat in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones, while the sounds of Josephine reorganising my living room drifted in from down the hall. "They're literally taking over," I whispered, clutching my coffee. "Yesterday, I found Blair wearing my clothes. Today, Josephine's replacing my family photos with her own. Madison's eyes narrowed. Have you talked to Benson about this? He's coming for dinner tonight. Josephine insisted on hosting a family meeting. I made air quotes with my fingers. Whatever that means. It means they're making their move, Madison said flatly. You need to watch that video. The envelope sat heavy in my pocket. I'd been carrying it around all day, afraid to leave it anywhere Blair might snoop. I know. Just what? What if it makes things worse? Madison leaned forward. Honey, how could it possibly be worse than watching these vultures strip away your life piece by piece? Before I could respond, Blair burst into the kitchen, wearing another one of my dresses. Oh good, you're both here. Mum wants everyone in the dining room at 7 sharp. We have important matters to discuss, she smirked. Wear something appropriate. The dinner was exactly as awful as I'd expected. Josephine sat at the head of the table, my spot, where I'd sat beside Eric for 6 years. Benson looked uncomfortable, pushing food around his plate while Josephine held court. It's clear to everyone that Sadie needs help managing the estate, Josephine announced, dabbing her lips with my grandmother's linen napkins. As Eric's mother, I feel it's my duty to step in temporarily. Temporarily? I echoed. Just until you're more stable, Blair added sweetly. We've all noticed how scattered you've been. I'm not scattered, I said firmly. I'm grieving. There's a difference. Josephine reached across the table to pat my hand. I resisted the urge to pull away. Darling, just this morning I found you staring at that safe for nearly an hour. It's not healthy. My head snapped up. They'd been watching me. I've already drafted the paperwork, Josephine continued, nodding to Benson. Just a simple transfer of executive control. For your own good, of course. Of course, Blair echoed, helping herself to more wine, my wine, from Eric's private collection. That was it. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood. Excuse me, I need to get something from upstairs. In my bedroom, I finally pulled out the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a USB drive and a note. If they're watching with you, say nothing. Just press play. I grabbed my laptop and headed back downstairs. Without a word, I set it up on the dining room sideboard facing the table. Sadie, dear, what are you doing? Josephine's voice had an edge to it. I pressed play. Eric's face filled the screen. My heart clenched. He looked so alive, so recently there. He was sitting in his study, wearing the blue shirt I'd given him for his last birthday. If you're watching this, he began, it means I'm gone, and my mother and sister have already moved in. Josephine's fork clattered to her plate. Sadie, my love, Eric continued, I'm so sorry I had to leave you with this mess, but I know you're stronger than they think. Stronger than even you think. He leaned forward, his expression hardening. Mum, Blair, if you're watching this too, understand something. I knew. I knew about the attempts to access my accounts. I knew about the conversations with lawyers about having Sadie declared incompetent. I knew everything. Blair's face had gone white. Josephine sat frozen. So I made arrangements, Eric continued. The will has been changed. The accounts have been secured, and if anything happens to Sadie, anything at all, everything goes to charity. Every penny. The silence in the room was deafening. Sadie gets full control. That's non-negotiable. And if either of you tries to challenge it, there's more evidence waiting to be released. Evidence you really don't want public. He softened again, looking directly at the camera. At me. You were always the strong one, my love. Show them why. The video ended. Benson cleared his throat in the silence that followed. I have copies of the new will here, he said quietly, pulling papers from his briefcase. Would anyone like to review them? Josephine stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. Without a word, she stormed out. Blair remained staring at me with naked hatred. This isn't over, she hissed, standing up. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I met her gaze steadily. Actually, I think I do. And Blair? That's my dress you're wearing. I want it back by morning. The morning after the video revelation, the house felt different. The silence was charged, dangerous. I found my dress, the one Blair had been wearing, crumpled in a wet heap in the garden. Real mature. Madison arrived with breakfast and raised eyebrows. How bad was the fallout? Josephine hasn't left her room, I said, accepting a coffee. Blair's been making passive-aggressive phone calls in the garden for hours. They're planning something. Obviously, I sighed. But what? We didn't have to wait long to find out. Around noon, Josephine emerged, perfectly composed in a tailored suit. She settled into the living room like nothing had happened. "Sadie, dear," she called out. "Come join me for tea." Madison squeezed my hand. "Want me to stay?" I shook my head. "I need to handle this." In the living room, Josephine was already pouring tea into my best china. "Sit, darling. We need to talk about this unfortunate situation." "There's nothing unfortunate about it," I said, remaining standing. "Eric made his wishes clear." "Did he?" She smiled thinly. "Or did someone influence those wishes during his final days, when he was vulnerable?" My blood ran cold. "What are you suggesting?" "Only that grief can make us see things that aren't there. Make us do things we wouldn't normally do." She sipped her tea delicately. "Like manipulating a dying man's will, perhaps." "You're unbelievable." "No, dear. I'm practical, and I have excellent lawyers." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and something flickered across her face. "Worry?" She stood abruptly. "Excuse me, I need to take this." She hurried into the hallway, but not far enough. Her whispered conversation carried clearly. "What do you mean they found it?" "No, destroy everything. I don't care what it costs, just handle it." I moved close to the door, straining to hear more. "If this gets out, no. You listen to me. I didn't spend 30 years building this family's reputation to have it destroyed by some gold-digging widow." The call ended. I quickly retreated to the living room, my mind racing. What had they found? What was she trying to destroy? Blair burst in moments later, her face flushed. "Mum, we have a problem. That investigator is—" She stopped short, seeing me. "Never mind." "What investigator?" I asked innocently. "None of your business," Blair snapped. Josephine returned, her composure slightly cracked. "Blair, darling, let's continue this discussion upstairs." "No need," I said, standing up. "I'll leave you to your secrets, but remember, Eric said he had evidence." "Are you sure you want to test what that means?" Blair's face contorted. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Playing the grieving widow while you plot and scheme." "Projecting much?" I shot back. "Enough!" Josephine commanded. "Sadie, since you're so interested in evidence, perhaps we should discuss the medications Eric was taking near the end, the ones that might have affected his judgment when making certain decisions." My stomach dropped. They were really going there. "Or maybe," Blair added, "we should talk about those late-night visits from that handsome lawyer while Eric was in the hospital." "Benson is married," I said flatly. "And gay. Try again." "It doesn't matter what's true," Josephine said smoothly. "Only what people believe. And people love a scandal." I was about to respond when Madison appeared in the doorway. "Sadie, Nicholas is here. He says it's urgent." Josephine's teacup clattered against its saucer. In Eric's study, Nicholas, the private investigator Benson had recommended, laid out several photographs. These were taken last week, before Mr. Kent's death. The photos showed Blair meeting with various men in expensive suits. The timestamps aligned with Eric's final days in the hospital. "And this," Nicholas said, sliding over one last photo, "was taken at the hospital's pharmacy." The image showed Josephine talking to a nurse, passing something that looked suspiciously like an envelope. "The nurse has agreed to talk," Nicholas added quietly. My hands shook as I gathered the photos. When I returned to the living room, Josephine was on another call, her voice urgent and low. "Whatever it takes," she was saying. "Just make it disappear." She saw me and froze. I held up the photos. "Make what disappear, Josephine? The evidence of tampering with Eric's medication? Or the proof that you were planning this takeover before he even died?" The phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. Behind her, Blair's face had gone ashen. "You want a war?" I said quietly. "Fine. But remember, Eric warned you, and I'm just getting started." Benson's office felt like neutral ground, though the tension in the room was anything but neutral. I sat across from him while he reviewed Nicholas's findings. "This is serious," he said, spreading the photos across his desk. "If they were tampering with medication, can we prove it? The nurse is willing to testify, but Sadie..." He leaned forward. Are you sure you want to go down this road? These women are dangerous. They're trying to destroy me, I said flatly. I need everything you have. He pulled out a thick folder. Eric left this with me, said to give it to you if things got ugly. He hesitated. It's going to get ugly. The folder contained bank statements, emails, and surveillance reports. Blair was drowning in gambling debts. Josephine had been siphoning money from family accounts for years. There's more, Benson said quietly. Josephine has a substantial life insurance policy on you. My blood ran cold. On me? How is that possible? Eric added you to the family policy years ago. If anything happens to you, accident, suicide, mental breakdown, Josephine collects millions. A knock interrupted us. Madison entered with Nicholas, both looking grim. Show her, Madison said. Nicholas placed a hotel surveillance photo on the desk. It showed Blair meeting with a man in an expensive suit. That's Marcus Reynolds, Nicholas explained. He specialises in having people declared mentally unfit, usually wealthy widows. He's expensive, Madison added, which is interesting considering Blair's broke. Not broke enough, apparently, I muttered. Actually, Nicholas pulled out more photos. These were taken an hour after that meeting. The images showed Blair at an ATM, looking distressed. Multiple declined transactions. They're desperate, Benson concluded, which makes them dangerous. My phone buzzed. A text from the house security system. Someone was accessing Eric's study. I need to go, I said, standing. They're searching the house. Don't confront them alone, Madison warned. I won't, but I need to see what they're looking for. I arrived home to find Blair frantically rifling through Eric's desk drawers. She froze when she saw me. Looking for something? I left a bracelet in here, she stammered. Try again. She straightened, dropping the pretense. Fine. Where's the rest of it? The rest of what? Don't play dumb. The evidence Eric mentioned. Where is it? Safe, I said simply. Very safe. Her face contorted. You think you're so clever. Poor little Sadie playing detective. No, I'm playing survivor, and I'm winning. Are you? She stepped closer. Because right now, Mum's meeting with doctors who are very concerned about your mental state. Grief can make people so unstable. Is that before or after she meets with Marcus Reynolds? Blair's face went white. How did you... I know everything, Blair. The gambling debts, the failed attempts to access Eric's accounts, the life insurance policy. You don't understand, she whispered. You have no idea what it's been like watching you live the life I deserved. The life you deserved? I laughed bitterly. You mean the life you couldn't earn? She moved to slap me, but I caught her wrist. Careful. Assault charges wouldn't look good in court. You bitch! Blair! Josephine's voice called from downstairs. Did you find it? I released Blair's wrist. Better go. Mommy's calling. She backed toward the door, her eyes wild. This isn't over. You're right, I agreed. It's just beginning. After they left, I called Madison. They're looking for something specific. The nurse called, she replied. She's ready to talk. Tomorrow morning. Good. Because I just found something interesting. I held up a small notebook I'd spotted fallen behind Eric's desk. Inside were dates, amounts, and coded names. I think I know where all that missing money went. Be careful, Madison warned. If they're desperate enough to search the house. I know. I looked at the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. But I'm not the only one watching anymore. The notebook felt heavy in my hands. Tomorrow the nurse would talk. Tomorrow more pieces would fall into place. And tomorrow Josephine and Blair would learn exactly how much evidence Eric had collected before he died. The nurse Sarah met us at a quiet cafe across town. Her hands shook as she stirred her coffee. They'll ruin me if they find out I'm talking to you, she whispered. They won't, Nicholas assured her. We've taken precautions. Sarah glanced around nervously before speaking. It started small. Mrs. Kent, Josephine, would ask questions about Mr. Kent's medication schedule. Then she started suggesting changes. Changes? I leaned forward. Timing adjustments, mostly, making sure he was less lucid during certain visits. Sarah's voice cracked. I should have reported it. Why didn't you? She pulled out an envelope. Because of this. Inside were photos of her teenage daughter. They knew where she went to school, what route she took home. My stomach turned. They threatened a child. They're monsters, Sarah whispered. But I kept records, dates, times, conversations. She slid a small notebook across the table. It's all there. Back at the house, Josephine was waiting in the foyer. Lovely morning for coffee with friends, isn't it? I froze. How did she know? Blair saw you, she explained, examining her manicure. Quite a cosy little meeting. Just catching up with old friends. Really? Because it looked rather conspiratorial. She stepped closer. Darling, you're not well. All these paranoid meetings, these wild accusations, we're worried about you. Right on cue, Blair appeared with a concerned expression. We only want to help. Like you helped Eric, I shot back. Josephine's face hardened. Careful, dear. Grief can make people say such regrettable things. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. It's done. Check your email. I smiled. You're right. I'm not feeling well. In fact, I think I need to lie down. In my room, I opened my laptop. Madison had sent security camera footage from the cafe. Every angle of Sarah's confession recorded in perfect clarity. Another message popped up from an anonymous email. Leave the house now. This is your final warning. I forwarded it to Nicholas, then heard shouting downstairs. Following the noise, I found Blair screaming into her phone. What do you mean denied? Try again. I need that money. She saw me and quickly hung up. Ever hear of privacy? In my house? Absolutely. Her eyes narrowed. Not for long. The doctors are very concerned about your mental state. Paranoid delusions, erratic behaviour. Funny, I have doctors too, with very different opinions. You think you're so smart, she snarled, but you have no idea what's coming. Actually, I do. I held up my phone, showing the cafe footage. Say hi to Sarah. The colour drained from her face. She rushed upstairs, calling for Josephine. Minutes later, I heard their heated whispers from the study. She knows everything, Blair hissed. Calm down, Josephine replied. The hearing is tomorrow, once we have control. It won't matter. She has proof. Then we'll have to move faster. Call Marcus. Tell him. I deliberately made the floorboard creak. Their conversation stopped abruptly. Don't let us interrupt, I called through the door. I'm sure Marcus Reynolds has lots of experience making evidence disappear. Silence. Then Josephine emerged, perfectly composed. Darling, you're obviously unwell. Hearing things, making accusations. Save it for the hearing, I said. I'm sure the judge will be very interested in Sarah's testimony. What judge? Josephine smiled coldly. The emergency hearing is tonight. Didn't Benson tell you? My heart stopped. That's not possible. Money makes many things possible, dear. She patted my cheek. Do try to dress appropriately. First impressions matter so much in these cases. They swept past me, leaving me standing there. I immediately called Benson. They moved the hearing, I said when he answered. Tonight. Impossible, he replied. Unless, hold on. I heard typing. Dear God, they got Judge Harrison. He's notorious for fast-tracking conservatorship cases. Can they do this? They're trying. But Sadie... He paused. We have something they don't. What? The truth. And about 20 witnesses ready to tell it. I ended the call and found a new email waiting. Everything's ready. Let them make their move. Emma. Game on, I thought. Let them try their emergency hearing. They had no idea what kind of emergency was coming their way. The courthouse hallway buzzed with tension. Josephine and Blair huddled with their expensive legal team, while Marcus Reynolds smirked in my direction. I sat alone, deliberately appearing fragile and distraught. Where's your lawyer, dear? Josephine called out sweetly. Surely Benson didn't abandon you. Right on cue, the courthouse doors burst open. Benson strode in, followed by Madison, Nicholas, and a parade of familiar faces, including Sarah the nurse, clutching a thick folder. Josephine's smirk faltered. What is this? Witnesses, I said simply. Judge Harrison's clerk appeared. The judge will see all parties in his chambers immediately. In the judge's chambers, Reynolds launched into his presentation. Your Honour, we're deeply concerned about Mrs. Kent's mental state following her husband's tragic death. She's been erratic, Blair chimed in, dabbing fake tears. Making wild accusations, seeing conspiracies everywhere. Speaking of conspiracies, Benson interrupted. sliding a file across the judge's desk. Your Honour, we have evidence of systematic medication tampering during Mr. Kent's final days. The judge's eyebrows shot up. Serious allegations, counsellor. With serious proof. Benson nodded to Sarah, who stepped forward. I have detailed records, she said, voice shaking. Dates, times, specific medication changes requested by Mrs. Josephine Kent. Josephine stood up. This is absurd. You can't possibly... sit down, the judge ordered. He reviewed the documents, his expression darkening. Mr. Reynolds, did you know about these allegations when you filed for emergency conservatorship? Reynolds tugged at his collar. Your Honour, these are clearly fabricated. Like these bank records. Nicholas stepped forward, producing more documents, showing systematic draining of Mr. Kent's accounts. Or perhaps these photos of your private meetings with Miss Blair Kent? Blair's face went white. That's invasion of privacy. No, I finally spoke. That's evidence gathering, which my husband started before he died. The judge leaned back. Explain. I played Eric's video on my tablet. The judge watched in silence as my husband detailed his suspicions, his evidence, his plans to protect me. When it finished, the room was deadly quiet. Your Honour, Reynolds tried again, a man's video testimony after being improperly medicated is perfectly admissible, Benson cut in, when supported by hospital records, witness statements and banking evidence, all of which we have. Josephine stood again. This is a witch hunt. We only want to protect your inheritance, I interrupted, or the life insurance policy you took out on me. The judge's head snapped up. Life insurance? Nicholas provided those documents too. The judge reviewed them, his face growing stormy. Mrs. Kent, Josephine, he clarified. Did you really think you could bring an emergency conservatorship case to my court while hiding these conflicts of interest? Your Honour. Save it. He closed the files. This hearing is dismissed. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into potential criminal charges. Blair burst into tears, real ones this time. Josephine remained stone-faced. This isn't over, she hissed as we left the chambers. Actually, it is. Madison appeared with 2 police officers. These gentlemen would like to ask about certain financial transactions. I watched as Josephine and Blair were escorted away for questioning. Reynolds slipped out during the chaos, but Nicholas just smiled. Don't worry about him, he said. The Bar Association is very interested in his recent activities. Back home, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single note in Blair's handwriting. You think you've won? Watch your back. Some accidents can't be prevented. I showed it to Madison and Nicholas. Perfect, Madison said. One last piece of evidence for the restraining order. And the criminal investigation, Nicholas added. I sat in Eric's study that night, surrounded by the evidence that had saved me. My phone buzzed with a text from Benson. Josephine's being held for questioning. Blair's credit cards are frozen. The house is yours again. Another text followed from Nicholas. Security system upgraded, 24/7, monitoring in place. And finally from Madison. You did it, girl. Eric would be proud. I touched the photo of Eric on his desk. He had known they would come for me, known I would need protection, but he'd also known I was strong enough to fight back. The house felt different now, quieter, safer, but I knew better than to relax completely. Josephine and Blair might be down, but they weren't out. Not yet. But for the first time since Eric died, I wasn't afraid. Let them try their worst, I was ready. The courthouse was packed for the final hearing. 3 weeks had passed since the failed conservatorship attempt, and now everything would be decided. I sat with Benson, watching Josephine and Blair enter in handcuffs, their designer outfits replaced by wrinkled court clothes. All rise, the bailiff called as Judge Harrison entered. Before we begin, the judge announced, I want to address the additional evidence submitted this morning. My heart stopped. What additional evidence? Josephine's new lawyer stood. Your Honour, we have proof that Mrs. Kent manipulated her husband's final days. Security footage from the hospital shows me reading to my dying husband, I interrupted, my voice steady. Would you like to see the audio that goes with that footage? The lawyer faltered. Benson pulled out a USB drive. The hospital's security system records audio, Your Honour, he explained. including Mrs. Josephine Kent's conversations about medication adjustments. Blair jumped up. This is ridiculous! She bewitched my brother, turned him against his own family. Sit down, her lawyer hissed, but Blair was beyond control. She's the one who should be in handcuffs. She stole everything from us. The money, the house, Eric's love. That's enough! Judge Harrison's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Miss Blair Kent, one more outburst and you'll be removed. Nicholas approached the bench with a thick folder. Your Honour, our forensic accountant's final report. It details every unauthorised transaction, every attempted account access, and every suspicious insurance policy change. The judge reviewed the documents, his expression hardening. Mrs. Josephine Kent, would you care to explain these transactions? Josephine stood, still managing to look regal despite her circumstances. Everything I did was for this family's legacy. Eric was being influenced by his wife's love, I cut in, by my desire to take care of him while you were trying to control his money. You know nothing about family, she spat. You're just a gold digger who has video evidence of your confession, Benson interrupted smoothly, holding up his phone. Recorded last week during your jail phone call with Marcus Reynolds. The colour drained from Josephine's face. The judge had heard enough. Based on the overwhelming evidence, this court finds the following. All claims against Sadie Kent are dismissed. The estate remains under her full control, as per her husband's legal will. Blair started sobbing. Josephine remained stone-faced. Furthermore, the judge continued, given the severity of the financial crimes and attempted fraud, I'm referring this case for criminal prosecution. Bail is denied for both defendants. You can't do this, Blair shrieked as officers approached. We're family. We're blood. Blood doesn't excuse criminal behaviour, the judge stated firmly. Remove them. As they were led away, Josephine turned to me one last time. You'll regret this. Family always finds a way. You're not family, I replied calmly. You never were. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Madison appeared, running interference while Benson led me to a waiting car. It's over, he said softly. Is it? I showed him my phone. Another anonymous text. You destroyed our family. Watch your back. Empty threats, Nicholas said, joining us. They're going away for a long time. The evidence is overwhelming. Speaking of evidence, Benson added, there's something you should see. Back at the house, he played one final video from Eric. This one had been hidden deeper, triggered only by a full legal victory. My love, Eric's face filled the screen, healthier than in the previous video. If you're watching this, you've done it. You've protected yourself, protected our life together. I'm so sorry I had to leave you with this burden. Tears filled my eyes as he continued. I knew they would come for you. They've always been jealous of our happiness, our love. But I also knew you were stronger than they ever imagined. You proved that today. He leaned closer to the camera. There's one last gift. Check the safe again. The combination has changed to the day we met. With trembling fingers, I opened the safe. Inside was a letter and a key. A new beach house, Benson explained. He bought it secretly, in your name only, somewhere to start fresh. The letter contained one line. Build the life you deserve, my love. They can never take that from you. Madison hugged me as I cried, not from sadness this time, but release. What now? She asked softly. I looked around the house, our house, where so much love and pain had lived. Now? Now I honour Eric's last wish. I build something new. Through the window, I watched the police car carrying Josephine and Blair disappear around the corner. They thought they could break me, control me, destroy me. Instead, they made me stronger. And now, finally, I was free. The beach house stood pristine against the setting sun, waves crashing against the shore below. I'd finally decided to see it, to touch the last gift Eric had left me. Madison whistled as we pulled up. He really knew how to pick them. He knew a lot of things, I said softly, turning the key in the lock. Inside, the house was everything Eric and I had ever dreamed about. Open spaces, wall-to-wall windows, a kitchen made for entertaining. On the counter sat a dusty envelope with my name. Another video? Madison asked. I shook my head. Just keys. And an address. The address led us to a storage facility nearby. Inside the unit, we found carefully organised boxes, each labelled with dates and contents. He documented everything, Nicholas said, joining us. Years of evidence against them. Financial records, photos, recorded conversations. But why keep it here? Madison wondered. Because he knew they'd searched the house, I realised. He needs somewhere they'd never think to look. My phone buzzed. Benson. Turn on the news. The local station was covering the sentencing. Josephine got 15 years for financial fraud and conspiracy. Blair got 8, with mandatory psychiatric treatment. They're actually going to prison, Madison breathed. They're not the only ones. Nicholas held up his phone. Marcus Reynolds just got disbarred. The nurse they threatened? Her testimony broke open 3 other cases of conservatorship fraud. I sat on a storage box, overwhelmed. Eric didn't just protect me. He exposed their whole operation. Speaking of exposure, Madison pointed to a box labelled insurance. Inside were documents revealing similar policies Josephine had taken out on other family members who had died mysteriously. The police will want these, Nicholas said quietly. Back at the beach house, I found one last surprise. A hidden panel in the master bedroom contained a journal, Eric's private thoughts during his final months. My darling Sadie, it began. I know you're reading this in a safer world than the one I left. You've faced them, fought them, and won. But winning isn't enough. I needed you to understand why. The pages detailed years of manipulation and abuse. How Josephine had controlled the family through money and fear. How Blair had been shaped into her mother's weapon. How others had tried to stand up to them and failed. But you, he wrote, you were different. You loved purely, lived honestly. Everything they hated, everything they couldn't control. That's why I knew you'd be the one to end their reign. Not with their tactics, but with truth. Madison found me crying on the balcony. You okay? He knew he was dying, I said. He used his death to set all this in motion, to protect me, but also to free everyone they ever hurt. He loved you that much. No, I smiled through tears. He trusted me that much. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from the prison. Blair wanted to see me. Don't go, Madison warned, but I went. Blair sat behind glass, prison jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. I needed you to know something. What? You didn't win, she spat. You just played your part in Eric's grand plan, like a good little puppet. I laughed, actually laughed. Is that what you think? That I was just following instructions? Weren't you? No, Blair. Eric gave me tools. I chose how to use them. He gave me truth. I chose to wield it. That's the difference between us. You let your mother puppet you. I chose my own path. We're still family, she tried. Blood. Blood isn't family, I cut her off. Love is family. Truth is family, something you never understood. I stood to leave. Wait, she called. What happens now? Now? I live. I build something new. And you? I met her eyes. You live with the consequences of your choices. The beach house was full of friends when I returned. Madison, Nicholas, Benson, even Sarah and her daughter. They'd prepared dinner, opened wine, filled the space with laughter. A toast, Benson proposed, to Eric, who saw the truth, and to Sadie, who made sure everyone else saw it too. I raised my glass, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. Eric had given me weapons, yes, but more importantly, he'd given me the strength to choose how to use them. They underestimated me because I wore grief like a shroud. But grief, when sharpened by love and truth, cuts deeper than hatred ever could. And now, surrounded by real family, I was ready to build something new from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. Something honest, something true, something they could never touch.
Hello, my name is Janice, and I'd like to share a story filled with twists and turns. One that weaves together themes of love, betrayal, and the pursuit of self-respect. Before diving in, let me introduce the key players in this unfolding drama. The story begins with me, Janice. I was born into a well-off family, a background some might consider privileged. From the outside, it appeared I had it all, a life of luxury from the very start. Yet my parents instilled in me the value of hard work and the importance of earning my keep instead of relying solely on family wealth. My father, a a self-made mogul in the engine additive industry, transformed a small niche business into a thriving empire. Meanwhile, my equally industrious mother established a successful chain of beauty salons, becoming a prominent figure in the industry. Their divorce when I was 21 was handled with remarkable grace. They split their assets evenly and maintained a friendship, no small feat in the realm of divorce. My father chose to embrace single life, immersing himself in his business and relishing his independence, while my mother remarried, though I remained her only child. Then there's Matthew, my husband, who would ultimately become the catalyst for a significant upheaval in my life. We married shortly after I graduated college, and I had just begun a job teaching music to energetic children, a role I cherished. Everything seemed perfect until I discovered I was pregnant, and that's when Matthew's true colors began to emerge. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as he lounged on the sofa, Matthew casually suggested I quit my job to stay home with the baby. "Why don't you just quit and stay at home? We'll manage," he said, completely unfazed. I was taken aback. Quitting my job was simply not an option on his salary alone, and I loved my work. Yet Matthew dismissed my concerns with a smirk, suggesting we could easily lean on my father's wealth. I was infuriated by his assumption that we could just tap into my parents' resources. This wasn't the first time he'd hinted at it, but discussing it so nonchalantly felt utterly disrespectful. The situation escalated during a dinner with his parents, where he brought it up again. Both his mother, sharp and opportunistic, and his father, who never missed a chance to offer unsolicited advice, enthusiastically supported the idea, painting grand visions of a comfortable life funded by my family's money. Each comment cut deeper, making me feel more like a means to an easier life than a partner in a marriage. That night, as I lay beside Matthew, an overwhelming sense of isolation washed over me. I questioned him softly, hoping I'd misunderstood his intentions. He turned to face me, his eyes once warm, now calculating, and said, "It's not about need, Janice. It's about being smart. Your parents can afford it, and we deserve a break. Why not take advantage of that?" The word deserve echoed in my mind long after he fell asleep. It became painfully clear that our values regarding dignity and independence were fundamentally at odds. This realization marked the beginning of a profound personal journey for me, one in which I would grapple with how much of my values I was willing to compromise. We were on divergent paths, holding on to differing beliefs close to our hearts. I found myself awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with missed warnings and an uncertain future. Despite the initial clash over financial independence and personal pride with Matthew, I clung to a faint hope that we might reconcile our perspectives. Unfortunately, I was mistaken. Enter Matthew's parents, bringing with them a whirlwind of chaos. They were hardly paragons of self-sufficiency, possessing an uncanny ability to seek out handouts. My family's financial stability was like a beacon calling to them. One evening, as we sat in our modest living room, David began pitching a new business venture that he claimed only needed a little startup cash. "Janice, darling," Mary chimed in with her cloyingly sweet tone, "with your family's backing, you could give us a leg up on this. It's practically a sure thing." I struggled to maintain my composure as I replied, "Mary, David, I've mentioned before that we're handling our finances without outside help. My parents' wealth isn't part of this conversation." But David persisted, sounding like a seasoned salesman. "Come on, Janice. You wouldn't even notice the money gone. What's a few thousand to your dad? He probably spends it on golf over a weekend." I was taken aback by their audacity. There they were, comfortably settled in our home, taking advantage of our hospitality while shamelessly eyeing my family's hard-earned wealth as if they were entitled to it. Matthew tried to play mediator, suggesting, "Maybe they have a point. It's just a loan, right? We'd be helping family." The word family left a bitter taste in my mouth. Since when did it become our responsibility to fund his parents' ventures? The atmosphere turned icy. Mary, never one to shy away from drama, exclaimed, "Well, I never. Here we thought families supported each other. But if you're going to be stingy." Seeing red, I shot back, "Working for what you have isn't stingy, Mary. It's called being responsible. Maybe you should consider that." David, trying to ease the tension, intervened. "Look, Janice, let's not get upset. We're just talking here." "Talking?" I retorted sarcastically, frustrated that our conversations always circled back to how my family could solve their problems. After they left, Matthew apologized for his parents' misunderstanding, but I lay awake that night, Realizing this wasn't a simple misunderstanding, it was an outright intrusion by two people who saw me not as a family member but as an easy financial resource. When our daughter Elizabeth was born, I had hoped for a shift in dynamics, but things only intensified. Matthew's parents arrived at the hospital with cheap, clearance-tagged onesies, while my parents brought a beautifully hand-knitted blanket and quality baby essentials. Mary's response to their generosity dripped with scorn and jealousy. Wow, really laying it on thick, aren't they? Must be nice to throw money around. They could have bought you a house instead of all this fluff. Matthew laughed along. Yeah, Mom's right, your folks don't hold back. A house might have been more practical, huh? Holding our newborn, my heart sank. Here I was, a new mother caught between the joy of my daughter's arrival and the unyielding pressure of familial expectations. I was struggling to navigate a path that honored my values while maintaining peace. It dawned on me that this struggle wasn't just about money, it was about respect, boundaries, and the kind of future I wanted for my family. As I cradled my daughter, all Matthew and his parents seemed to focus on was how my parents had chosen to spend their money. Hearing Matthew echo his mother's mercenary thoughts was painful. Did they see our daughter as just another way to secure financial gain? I tried to keep the peace, insisting, it's not about the price tag, it's the thought that counts. But David was relentless. Sure, but think about it. Investing in property now, that's a gift that keeps on giving. The car ride home from the hospital was strained. Matthew tried to reassure me, claiming his parents were just old-fashioned and meant no harm. Doubts began to gnaw at me. Was Matthew's affection genuine, or was he more interested in my family's wealth? A few weeks later, during another uninvited visit, the topic arose again. We were squeezed into our living room, Elizabeth fussing in my arms when Mary couldn't resist commenting on the new stroller my mom had gifted us. Must be nice having your folks shower Elizabeth with all these fancy toys and gadgets. Though a contribution to a house fund would have been more useful, don't you think? Her voice dripped with passive aggression. Matthew, sitting next to his mother, chimed in. Actually, babe, we've been thinking maybe your parents could help with a down payment instead of more baby stuff. Makes sense, right? I was stunned. Not only were Matthew's parents relentless, but now Matthew was echoing their sentiments, turning our daughter's birth into leverage for financial gain. I felt trapped in a twisted reality where love and family were overshadowed by material wealth. Is that what this is about for you, Matthew? Using my parents for money? I couldn't mask the hurt in my voice. I thought we were in this together, for better or worse, not for richer or poorer. Matthew seemed taken aback, but Mary merely sniffed. Well, when your wife's parents are wealthy, it's only practical to think about these things. After they left, I lay awake, Elizabeth sleeping peacefully beside me, and the harsh truth hit me. My marriage and family felt like a transaction, and I was the currency. The ensuing years became a roller coaster. Elizabeth blossomed into a spirited 4-year-old, brimming with life and laughter, but life threw unexpected curveballs. First, it was my mother. Her accident was sudden and devastating. I was engulfed in grief, struggling to hold myself together for Elizabeth's sake. But Matthew's first question wasn't about how I was coping. Instead, he asked, So, how much are you getting from your mom's will? It felt like a slap in the face. My mother hadn't even been laid to rest, and there he was, eyeing her legacy like a vulture. According to my mom's will, I inherited the beauty salon chain, something I had no idea how to run. Yet Matthew was eager to step in. Babe, let me handle this. You know I've got a knack for business, he offered, his usual confidence shining through. Lost in my grief, I allowed him to take the lead, even though I made sure the ownership papers stayed in my name. I hoped, perhaps naively, that he might turn things around for us. But barely a year later, my father passed away from a heart attack. Losing both my parents in such a short time shattered something inside me. I needed Matthew more than ever, but I was beginning to realize that our views on money, support, and family were worlds apart. The day after my father's passing, I was reeling from the loss, hoping for some semblance of sympathy or at least respectful silence from Matthew and his parents. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be. As soon as they walked through the door, David barely hid his excitement, eagerly speculating about the inheritance. So, Janice, there must be a hefty sum coming your way, huh? His eyes gleamed with barely contained glee. I saw red. Can you not, for once, just stop talking about money? I exploded, my words ringing sharply through the room. Mary adopted an offended demeanor immediately. Well, I never. We're just concerned about the family's future. No need to be rude. Matthew attempted to smooth things over as usual. They're just curious. It's a big deal, you know. A big deal, I echoed, my voice rising in disbelief. My parents are gone, Matthew. And all you and your parents can think about is cashing in. Is that all I am to you? A bank? The room fell silent, the tension so thick it felt tangible. Matthew glanced between me and his parents, mumbling a half-hearted apology. But the damage was done. I could no longer stand the sight of their greed, their complete lack of empathy. Get out, I said, my voice steady but ice-cold. They left, with Mary muttering under her breath and David scowling. Matthew lingered, trying to justify his parents' behavior, but I was beyond listening. 3 days later, Matthew burst through the door, his face alight with what he considered good news. Baby, I've got awesome news, he exclaimed, barely containing his excitement. I struck a deal to sell the hair salon chain. Can you believe it? My jaw dropped. What? You did what? Without even asking me, I was seething, a mix of betrayal and disbelief coursing through me. Before we could delve into a serious discussion, his parents showed up, ready to celebrate as if we'd won the lottery. They brought a lavish feast from a fancy restaurant and high-end cigars. Mary was beaming, waving the cigars in my face. Guess what, honey? We sold the old condo and put down a deposit on a beach house. We're all moving to the coast. I felt as if I were trapped in a nightmare. Hold on, you what? Nobody asked me about moving. I don't want to live by the beach with all that humidity and wind. Are you out of your mind? Mary dismissed my concerns with a wave of her hand. Oh, don't worry about that. We've booked a crew. You should come with us. It'll be fabulous. Where is this money coming from? I demanded, my patience wearing thin. Well, darling, with your father's passing and the sale of the salons, money's no object now. We're set for life. Think about it. Yachts, private jets. We're living the dream. Mary's eyes sparkled with dollar signs. I turned to Matthew, utterly dumbfounded. Why are we even talking about selling my mom's business again? And what's this nonsense about being set for life? Babe, it makes sense, Matthew insisted. Managing both businesses will be too much. We need to focus on what's more profitable. It's for our future, for our daughter's future. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The greed, the audacity of it all. It was overwhelming. Show me the financials for the salon, I demanded. I want to see everything before we make any rash decisions. Matthew squirmed, avoiding eye contact. Look, it's all about our future, about making sure we're comfortable, he replied, but his parents chimed in, pressing me to just let go and enjoy the windfall. As they spoke, it became painfully clear that this wasn't just about securing a comfortable future. It was about exploiting my grief and inheritance for their gain. Surveying the scene before me, I felt like vultures were circling overhead. Why the sudden rush to sell the hairdressing shops? I pressed, wanting an explanation. With a nonchalant shrug that seemed to dismiss the gravity of the situation, he replied, Look, after your dad's passing, managing both businesses doesn't add up. We need to concentrate on what's more profitable. The auto oil venture is literally striking gold compared to the salons. His parents quickly joined the conversation, eagerly chiming in. Think about it, dear. Selling those small shops could set you up for a life of comfort and luxury. Why bother with them? His mother's voice dripped with greed, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Their blatant avarice made my skin crawl. I want you all to leave, I demanded, my voice steady and strong. This is a time for mourning, not for scavenging through what he left behind. Matthew attempted to interject, but I silenced him. And another thing, this inheritance we're discussing, it's mine. You and your parents have no say in this matter. The room chilled as they realized I wasn't as compliant as they had assumed. With heavy steps and dark scowls, they left, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the looming battle ahead. The day after my father's funeral was bleak, shrouded in a fog of sorrow. Matthew, however, seemed oblivious to the somber mood. Over a lackluster breakfast, he declared, We need to call a meeting with your father's company executives, pronto. His voice cut through the silence aggressively. I paused, toast in hand, looking at him in disbelief. Matthew, my father has just been laid to rest. Can't this wait? I need time to process all of this. He dismissed my concerns with a casual flick of his hand, emphasizing that time was money and we had to act swiftly. Frustrated and seeking some solid footing, I contacted our family lawyer for a detailed overview of the barbershop chain's status and insights into my father's business dealings. A month passed, filled with legal jargon and financial statements, during which Matthew and his parents returned, bombarding me with unsolicited advice and greedy propositions. Without even greeting me, Matthew dove straight into conversation. "You know, I've been thinking, I'm the right man to take over your dad's company." His audacious statement left me dumbfounded. But he wasn't finished. "And I'll need a new car, something that fits a business leader. The latest BMW should suffice." Before I could respond, Mary jumped in with her extravagant demands. "The beach house is nearly done. We just need an additional $460,000 for finishing touches and some extra for new luxury furniture. And darling, I expect you to fund an account for my expenses. I need to maintain my lifestyle." Listening to their relentless demands, something within me snapped. "No more." I stood firm, clutching the divorce papers like a protective talisman. I interrupted their chatter, my voice firm and resolute. "Matthew, we need to talk." I placed the documents in front of him on the coffee table. He picked them up, confusion etching his face. "What's this?" he managed to ask, his voice trembling. "Divorce papers," I announced, each word clear and decisive. "I've had the business audited. Matthew, you've driven it to the brink of collapse." As I confronted him about the mismanagement of our business, his face paled, his demeanor that of a child caught in a wrongdoing. "I was trying to make things better," he stammered, his excuses as fragile as his waning confidence. "Make it better by firing our most talented staff and neglecting the essentials that kept the business thriving," I retorted, my voice rising, fueled by a potent mix of anger and betrayal. Mary, ever the meddler, couldn't resist butting in. "Now, dear, let's remember he's entitled to half of everything. Marriage binds assets after all." I couldn't help but laugh, though it was devoid of any joy. "Nice try, but everything's been in my name since before I made the colossal mistake of marrying your son. He gets nothing from me." The room fell silent as their grandiose plans crumbled before my eyes. "And another thing," I continued, fixing Matthew with a firm gaze. "You're going to repay every penny you've cost the business. Every single penny." When the reality of the divorce sank in, Matthew became desperate. "Please, can't we talk about this? There has to be another way," he begged, his voice cracking with desperation. Not to be outdone in theatrics, his parents launched into a tearful saga about how they had sunk all their funds into the coastal house, a property now at risk without further investment. "We're going to lose everything," his mother sobbed, tears flowing freely. "Please think of what this means for us." I listened, my heart hardened by their previous actions, feeling nothing but cold detachment. "Sorry, but that's your mess," I said, my tone firm and resolute. With newfound determination, I guided them to the door, closing it behind them and leaving this chapter of my life behind. In the days that followed, I didn't dwell on the past. Instead, I focused on the future. Selling the apartment that Matthew and I once shared provided just enough for a quaint, welcoming house that promised a new beginning for my daughter and me. Stepping into our new home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of peace enveloping us in a way that had been missing for far too long. The wheels of justice turned slowly but surely. When they finally caught up with Matthew, he was ordered by the courts to compensate for the turmoil he had inflicted on the hairdresser chain. His recklessness had a price, and he was forced to liquidate his share of our old apartment to meet his financial obligations. Watching him be held accountable was a bittersweet vindication for all the hardships he had caused. Out of nowhere, my phone rang one day, and on the other end was my former mother-in-law. Her voice tinged with desperation. "We're in a bind. We need help to buy a place. Any amount would help," she pleaded. Her audacity left me incredulous. I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts before responding. "You made your bed." My tone was steady and resolute. "It's time you lie in it." Ending the call, a mix of emotions washed over me. My anger at their continued sense of entitlement was undeniable, but there was also a profound relief in having finally set firm boundaries. After the tumultuous divorce and reclaiming control over my mother's hairdressing chain, life began to brighten again. It was a challenging journey, but gradually the salons started to regain their former vibrancy, welcoming back the talented stylists we had lost. It felt like a triumphant parade watching them walk through those doors again, ready to weave their magic. It turned out I was more suited for the business world than I had ever imagined. Every day brought new lessons and surprises about what I could achieve. If not for the harsh twists life threw my way, I might never have discovered this capability within myself. Managing my father's car oil business was another challenge, so I decided to hire a manager to oversee operations while I acclimated to the industry. It's all yours for now, but keep me in the loop, I told him, making it clear that I was still the one in charge. I thought about the future. Maybe when Elizabeth is around 22, I might pass it on to her if she's interested. I wanted her to have options to choose her path. Meanwhile, our new home, just Elizabeth and me, became a sanctuary of peace, a stark contrast to the chaos we had left behind. It was small, but it was ours, a place where we could grow, heal, and start anew. Every corner of our home was filled with laughter, every nook cradling a memory we were creating together. In the garden, Elizabeth's laughter was a balm to my soul. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be just like you," she said, her eyes alight with wonder and admiration. "You're going to be even more amazing," I responded, pulling her into a hug. Deep down, I knew we were on the brink of something wonderful together. We were unstoppable, ready to embrace whatever the future held with open arms and hopeful hearts. Hello, my name is Charlotte, a 32-year-old woman sharing a recent transformative experience that helped me find peace after a difficult time with my husband and his family. This journey began a few months ago, and while things are starting to settle, I'm still processing the emotional aftermath. By telling my story, I hope to find some healing. Rewind to 4 years ago when I took a big step in my life. I married my boyfriend, Benjamin. We met through mutual friends and spent 3 wonderful years together before deciding to marry. Benjamin was charismatic, always the life of any gathering, caring, generous, and coming from an affluent background with a successful career. His kindness felt boundless, and he loved to surprise me with thoughtful gifts. Our bond grew deeper over our shared love of travel, and my friends were genuinely happy for us. One generous gesture stood out. For my college graduation, Benjamin surprised me with a brand new laptop. I felt both grateful and slightly uncomfortable as it highlighted the financial gap between us. "Benjamin, I'm just a student," I'd say, trying to broach the subject. "I can't keep up with this level of spending. Let's at least split some costs." But he would just smile, shrugging off my concerns, assuring me that it was normal for him to spoil me just as his friends did with their partners. Eventually, I accepted his gestures, though I always contributed however I could. Once I landed a good job after graduation, I was excited to reciprocate his generosity. We began splitting expenses more evenly, even discussing the idea of moving in together. One day, Benjamin suggested, "Why don't you move in with me? I inherited my grandfather's house, so there's no rent. We can share the other costs to keep things fair." Although I was a bit hesitant, he convinced me it would be best for both of us. With that, we started a new chapter together, balancing our finances in a way that reflected our different income levels. Then came the moment to meet Benjamin's family, who lived far from us. Because of his work commitments, I found myself hosting his family alone. Before their visit, Benjamin warned me they could be judgmental but didn't offer much detail, only advising me to smile and not to take any hurtful comments personally. Hoping for a pleasant encounter, I prepared for their arrival. But from the moment his parents and sister walked through the door, the atmosphere felt tense. Their disapproval became obvious, voiced openly. "So, you're the woman Benjamin's been seeing," his mother, Susan, remarked, casting a scrutinizing glance around. "I didn't expect you'd be living here. Do you pay rent?" Trying to maintain my composure, I explained, "The house is fully paid for by Benjamin, but we share all other expenses equally." Susan didn't seem satisfied. "Just because the house is paid for doesn't mean you can freeload," she retorted. "This is Benjamin's house, not yours. Remember that." Her words were cutting, and the conversation only became more uncomfortable. Benjamin's sister, Kelly, wasn't any warmer. She barely spoke to me, instead making pointed references to her marriage to a billionaire, perhaps to establish her perceived superiority. My attempts to connect with her were met with dismissive responses. Throughout their visit, Benjamin offered no support. In fact, he almost seemed to side with them. His parents criticized my spending habits, particularly my purchases of makeup and skincare, labeling them frivolous for someone with limited financial contribution. They seemed skeptical of my independence, and Benjamin had apparently fueled their perception, portraying me as a struggling student when we first met, as if to downplay my growth since then. It was a tough and eye-opening experience, one that made me question my relationship with Benjamin and the dynamics within his family. I had been dependent on Benjamin at the start of our relationship, but his portrayal of me felt exaggerated and misleading, almost as if he wanted to reinforce his family's negative opinions. While Benjamin had indeed supported me financially early on, we had since adjusted our finances to split costs equally. Yet in front of his family, he remained silent, almost complicit in their disapproval, making the entire experience deeply unsettling. When I tried to explain this to Benjamin, reminding him that I had always lived modestly and that any luxury items I owned were gifts from him, gifts I'd often advised against due to their extravagance, he brushed it off. He defended his lavish spending, saying it was part of his social status, as if his generosity was more about his image than about genuinely caring for me. After his family left, I confronted him about their harsh comments, but he dismissed my concerns. "Don't take it to heart, Charlotte," he said casually. "They didn't mean it seriously. You're overreacting." His refusal to acknowledge the problem left me feeling alone in my frustration. 6 months later, Benjamin proposed. Despite my reservations, I accepted, and we began planning an engagement party, agreeing to share the expenses equally. By then, I had started a small business, a project I found personally fulfilling, though Benjamin barely showed any interest. To him, it seemed insignificant, but to me, it represented independence and accomplishment. For the engagement party, I even covered the plane tickets for my extended family to make sure they could attend. But as soon as the celebration began, familiar criticisms emerged. "You shouldn't have spent so much on this party, Charlotte," Susan chided. "You're draining Benjamin's funds before you're even married. At this rate, you'll end up with a backyard wedding." Their biting remarks cast a shadow over what should have been a joyful occasion. Feeling defensive, I spoke up. Yes, the party was lavish, but Benjamin and I agreed on this together. I paid my share, and he was just as enthusiastic about inviting so many guests. However, the criticisms didn't end there. Susan accused me of pushing Benjamin to spend beyond his means, while Kelly insinuated that she knew the kind of person I was and suggested I should have been more considerate. Overwhelmed, I stepped outside for air, only to overhear Kelly and her husband Mason mocking me. It felt as though my engagement party was unraveling, and Benjamin, oblivious to the cruelty of his family, did nothing to defend me. As I looked back at the scene, I realized how isolated I felt in my own celebration, wondering if Benjamin's silence and his family's judgment were signs of a larger issue I had overlooked. I found myself unemployed, which painted me as dependent rather than the self-sufficient woman I truly was. My mother, who had raised me single-handedly and understood the importance of financial independence, noticed my growing distress. With a protective concern, she urged me to reconsider the engagement, pointing to the relentless harsh comments from Benjamin's family. After the engagement party, I decided to confront Benjamin about everything that had transpired. He dismissed my worries, insisting that his family was just joking and assuring me that financial issues were irrelevant because he loved me. Determined to take charge, I expressed my desire to contribute more significantly to our finances, including paying rent. Yet again, Benjamin brushed off my concerns as we moved forward with wedding plans. The mounting stress became almost unbearable. Benjamin's parents were relentless, criticizing every decision I made and accusing me of putting financial strain on their son. Their constant scrutiny made the engagement period a living nightmare. I explained that everyone, including my mother, was contributing to the wedding expenses, but Susan harshly accused me of exploiting Benjamin, labeling me a gold digger. Determined to defend myself, I approached Arthur, Benjamin's father. "Arthur, I'm not asking for any financial help. We can fully finance the wedding ourselves," I assured him. Despite my efforts to clarify, Kelly continued her sharp critiques, especially targeting the cost of my wedding dress and makeup. This entire experience underscored the stark differences between my values and Benjamin's family's expectations, forcing me to deeply reconsider our future together. Even though I carefully explained that my mother had covered many of the wedding expenses, the ceremony itself went smoothly. However, the reception was tainted by Susan and Arthur's relentless criticisms. They accused me of mismanaging their son's finances, completely disregarding my attempts to explain and defend my actions. Their unwavering determination to tarnish my reputation left me feeling powerless. Choosing peace over confrontation, I remained silent, refusing to let their negativity ruin our special day. A few months after the wedding, Benjamin received a significant promotion at work. Eager to celebrate his achievement, he planned a grand family dinner, and I was excited to make the occasion even more memorable. I volunteered to cover the entire event, expressing to Benjamin how proud I was in my desire to create a perfect evening for him. I explained that my business was thriving and that I had access to resources from a trust fund set up by my maternal grandfather. With great care and attention to detail, I organized the dinner, hoping to showcase my support and love. However, when Benjamin's family arrived, it was immediately clear they were displeased. Their disapproval was palpable, even as other guests reacted positively to the celebration. When it came time for speeches, Susan took the floor with a commanding presence. "Thank you all for joining us to celebrate my son's promotion," she began. "He's worked hard and deserves every bit of his success. Unfortunately, it seems his luck doesn't extend to his choice in partners. It's quite sad that he has tied himself to someone whom many would label a gold digger." Her words hung heavily in the air, instantly shifting the atmosphere from joyous to tense. The discomfort was unmistakable, and I could feel the eyes of the guests on me, judging and whispering. Despite the hurtful remarks, I maintained my composure, refusing to let their negativity overshadow the celebration. Benjamin, however, seemed oblivious to the animosity directed my way, further highlighting the disconnect between us and his family. As the evening progressed, the tension remained thick, making it clear that Benjamin's family's disapproval was far from over. Their harsh judgments and unfounded accusations continued to cast a shadow over what should have been a proud and happy moment. This relentless negativity forced me to confront the reality of my relationship with Benjamin and the challenges that lay ahead in navigating his family's hostility. The weight of Susan's words hit hard, yet I stayed composed, choosing silence over reaction as she continued. "Had he seen her true nature sooner," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "perhaps he wouldn't be burdened by her excessive lifestyle." She swept her gaze around the room, her message clear and cutting. "From the engagement to this dinner, it's obvious to everyone that his wife's extravagance has been nothing but a drain." Despite the sharpness of her critique, I remained calm, knowing that responding would only seem to validate her baseless claims. Then, with a smug satisfaction, Susan added, "Fortunately, we had the foresight to ensure Charlotte signed a prenuptial agreement. At least some of his assets are safeguarded." She sighed with mock relief. "It's a blessing that my son chose someone who can, at the very least, maintain the facade of a trophy wife." To my shock, Benjamin didn't refute her words. Instead, he nodded along. "I can barely spend on myself anymore," he complained, casting a regretful look my way. "Maybe I made a mistake." Hurt and stunned, I finally spoke. "Do you really think I'm a gold digger?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with hurt. Benjamin's response was biting. "Your lifestyle," he said coldly, "has been damaging to my bank account." Taking a deep breath, I decided to confront the accusation directly. "Since everyone here seems to believe that I'm a gold digger, maybe I should show you my bank balance," I declared. "I'm financially independent, and I don't need anyone's money." My statement was met with silence and disbelief, but I continued. Susan's gaze narrowed. "Did you steal my son's money?" she accused. To my shock, Benjamin added, "She must have taken it somehow." Holding my composure, I replied, "I don't need to steal from your son. I earn my own income, and I recently accessed a trust fund left by my grandfather. I was planning to use it to buy us a bigger house as a surprise, but under these circumstances, that seems unnecessary now." Benjamin looked at me, missing the tension entirely. "We could still get the house. It would be a wonderful gift." But I was resolute. "This is not happening," I said firmly. "Your family has insulted me for too long, and you've never once defended me. You've let these false assumptions continue." Benjamin brushed it off, claiming, "You're overreacting." But this time, I have finally reached my limit. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. "No, I'm not overreacting," I said, breaking the silence. "Everyone here knows exactly what your family has been saying about me." The room fell quiet, the weight of my words hanging heavily. This was the moment I made it clear. I could no longer tolerate the continuous lack of support and respect from Benjamin and his family. In that moment, surrounded by a sea of guests at our engagement party, the accumulated weight of years of disrespect finally broke me. I reached my breaking point, realizing that I couldn't endure the toxic environment that had tainted my relationship with Benjamin any longer. With unwavering clarity and determination, I turned to him and said, "I want a divorce." As Benjamin stumbled over words of protest, my mother stepped in firmly. "You've never defended my daughter," she stated, her voice calm and resolute. "It's time she leaves this toxic relationship for good." Without another word, we left the party, the murmur of shocked guests behind us. My decision was final. My mother's unwavering support closed this painful chapter in my life. That night, I returned to our shared home, packed my belongings, and ignored Benjamin's calls. I muted my phone and sought refuge at my mother's house. The very next day, I contacted my cousin, a lawyer, to begin the divorce proceedings. With a prenuptial agreement already in place, I knew it would be a straightforward process that would safeguard my assets. But things escalated when Benjamin and his family showed up at my mother's doorstep, demanding to speak with me. My mother, ever the pillar of strength, instructed them firmly to leave. Meanwhile, Benjamin's messages swung wildly between tearful apologies and unsettling threats, all of which I documented. If necessary, I was prepared to seek a restraining order. At one point, he even tried to confront me at my office, but security escorted him out after I alerted them. This incident only reinforced my resolve. I decided to step away not just from my relationship but also from my job. My thriving business meant I no longer needed the position, and I was ready to prioritize peace and dignity over wealth. I handed in my resignation that day, determined to move forward. A week later, I served the divorce papers to Benjamin at his workplace, only to learn that he'd already heard about my resignation. Former colleagues informed me that he continued to reach out, sending flowers and gifts to my mother's house. But I remained resolute, fully committed to starting anew. With my mother's unwavering support, I found a new refuge, a quiet home in a neighboring state where I could start fresh, free from the shadows of my past. As I awaited the finalization of the divorce, the judge expedited the proceedings thanks to our clear prenuptial agreement. During the 6 months of our separation, I took time to regroup and mentally prepare for the next chapter. I settled comfortably into my new home, changed my phone number to break contact with Benjamin, and began to savor the tranquility and independence of my new life. Occasional updates trickled in, revealing that Benjamin's life was unraveling. He blamed his parents for our divorce and struggled professionally as colleagues distanced themselves and his superiors frowned upon the drama he brought to his workplace. His parents made things worse by spreading baseless rumors about me, but thankfully, these falsehoods didn't gain traction. In stark contrast, my life flourished. I threw myself into expanding my business and embraced the freedom and possibilities that came with my newfound autonomy. Slowly, I began to socialize again and cautiously stepped back into the dating scene. Though Benjamin's behavior had left scars, I remained optimistic, hopeful that I could heal and eventually find someone who would truly value and respect me. The hardship I endured because of Benjamin's actions had caused me immense pain, but it had also forged a newfound strength within me. Moving through and beyond these challenges propelled me into a future brimming with opportunities and personal growth. I now look forward to what lies ahead, confident in my resilience and clear on what I want in relationships and in life itself. Everything changed in an instant when I heard my husband's harsh tone over the phone. He sharply questioned why I always fell apart when he needed me the most, completely indifferent to the fact that I was in the hospital, worried sick about our baby's well-being. Instead of offering support, he grumbled about his hunger and the lack of my home-cooked meals, saying he was too impatient to wait and planned to eat out with his parents. This left me to figure out how to make my way back from the hospital. His words only heightened my anxiety and sorrow, amplifying my fears for our unborn child's safety and my ability to protect them. I had once been a committed cosmetic salesperson, recognized for my diligence and success, with many accolades to my name. Falling in love with my husband had felt like a fairy tale, and our courtship quickly led to marriage. But after discovering my pregnancy, I faced the difficult decision to leave my job to reduce the risk of miscarriage, prioritizing the well-being of our future family. As my pregnancy progressed, my husband's support dwindled. The initial excitement had given way to irritation, and daily tasks became Herculean efforts. I struggled to meet his expectations, and his constant inquiries about lunch, along with his dismissive comments about the simple meals I managed to prepare, left me feeling disheartened. He trivialized my pregnancy challenges, refusing to acknowledge them as legitimate health concerns, which made me feel isolated and unsupported. This was a stark departure from the man I had fallen deeply in love with. He stopped attending doctor's appointments and showed little interest in the household duties that became increasingly difficult for me. Our home, once a haven of love and respect, had turned into a battleground of constant strife as I fought to safeguard both myself and our baby. Despite these trials, I clung to the hope that understanding and patience would return to our relationship. Perhaps he was just overwhelmed and stressed from mentoring a newcomer at work. I reassured myself that things might improve once the baby arrived and his workload eased. I often whispered words of encouragement to my growing belly, trying to maintain a positive outlook despite my physical discomfort and the tension at home. Unfortunately, my husband's behavior didn't improve. To make matters worse, my in-laws began dropping by unannounced, complicating everything further. They would critique the cleanliness of our home and express concern about how we would manage with the baby, yet they still expected immediate service when it came to meals. These visits left me feeling defeated and anxious, and my husband siding with their criticisms only deepened my sense of inadequacy. One day, while heavily pregnant, I went out to buy groceries but ended up collapsing from sheer exhaustion. When I regained consciousness in the hospital, relief washed over me to hear that our baby was unharmed, but the doctor advised several days of rest. I noticed missed calls from my husband on my phone, hoping for some sign of his concern when I returned his call. Instead of comfort, his first words were sharp and accusatory. "Where have you been?" His indifference to my well-being and our baby's safety chilled me to the bone. I tried to explain. "I'm sorry. I collapsed at the store and found myself in the hospital. They had put me on IV fluids and wanted me to stay for a few days to recover." When I called my husband to explain, his response was curt and lacking any empathy. "You collapse and I'm supposed to care? Why don't you answer when I call?" "You're so slow," he retorted, worsening my distress. Overwhelmed by his harshness, I pleaded, "Please stop yelling. It's not good for the baby." But he dismissed my concerns, continuing to complain, "We're starving here waiting for your awful cooking, and you're just relaxing in the hospital." It was clear that he preferred dining out with his parents rather than being there for me in my time of need. This realization only deepened the stark negativity surrounding our home environment, an atmosphere I feared would envelop our child. The sharp sting of my husband's anger and apparent indifference felt crushing. I hung up the phone, feeling utterly abandoned and heartbroken as I shuffled back to my hospital room, tears flooding my cheeks, a stark reflection of my vulnerability. In that low moment, a familiar, comforting voice reached out to me. "Are you okay?" Looking up, I saw Elizabeth, a cherished acquaintance from my days as a cosmetic salesperson, extending a comforting towel toward me. Seeing her again brought me an immense sense of relief and warmth. "Elizabeth, it's you. I'm so glad you remember me." Our unexpected meeting felt like a beacon of kindness and connection in my darkest hour. To me, Elizabeth was more than just a client. After a difficult divorce that had eroded her confidence and led her to shun makeup completely, I had approached her at the cosmetics counter one day, eager to help her rediscover some joy in self-care. The transformation wasn't just about her appearance. It revitalized her self-esteem and marked a significant step in her emotional recovery. Over time, Elizabeth became a friend rather than just a client. However, about 6 years before I resigned from my job, Elizabeth stopped visiting, and I often wondered about her whereabouts. Now, here she was, offering support when I needed it most. "I had been hoping to reconnect with you, Elizabeth." I admitted I was surprised yet grateful as Elizabeth explained her absence. "I'm sorry for just showing up out of the blue," she said. "I've been working abroad, running a business overseas. It's been hectic and I haven't had a chance to enjoy summer or good food in ages." Her words trailed off, but her presence was a profound comfort, reminding me of the bonds that could sustain me through tough times. When Elizabeth mentioned she had just returned and sought me out, her laughter lightened the mood. "Believe it or not, right after I got back, I tried to find you," she chuckled. It turned out that Elizabeth had returned with a mild health scare, a phthisis, which fortunately had been caught early and was easily treatable with medication. If this had happened while I was still overseas, the treatment costs would have been astronomical, she explained. "So, in a way, I'm glad it happened here." Her optimism and warm smile were infectious, lifting my spirits as we joyfully reminisced about old times. As our conversation deepened, Elizabeth's expression turned thoughtful. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but you seemed quite upset earlier. What's going on?" Trusting Elizabeth not just as a former client but as a genuine friend, I confided in her about my current struggles with my husband and in-laws. "I'm really worried about bringing my baby into this environment. I'm afraid they'll be treated the same way I am, and without my job, The idea of living independently, especially with a child, feels daunting. To my astonishment, Elizabeth made an incredibly generous offer. I actually have an apartment you could use. I manage a few properties from a project I started with the land I inherited. It's a cozy 3-bedroom with a separate bathroom, solid roof, and good walls. It's in a safe neighborhood, close to supermarkets and a police station. You wouldn't need to pay a deposit right now, and you can start paying rent whenever you're ready. It's a really good deal. What do you think? Elizabeth's excitement and sincerity were palpable, and I couldn't help but laugh, overwhelmed by her kindness. Are you sure you can offer it at such great terms? I asked. She replied confidently, absolutely. I trust you'll take good care of the place, and I think it's important to support each other during tough times. Her gesture was a profound reminder of the goodness in the world, just when I needed it most. You're more than welcome to stay there, Elizabeth assured me with a warm, comforting smile. Her unexpected kindness felt like a beam of light in my dark times, offering not just a place to stay but also a chance for a new beginning. Overwhelmed by her generosity, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. I gratefully accepted her offer, and a few days later, after the doctors had cleared me, I didn't return to the home I shared with my husband. Instead, I moved straight into the apartment Elizabeth had arranged for me. She had handled everything over the phone with such ease and kindness that I was left in awe. As I settled into Elizabeth's cozy and welcoming apartment, a twinge of guilt crept in for not paying rent immediately, but she brushed it off with a laugh, insisting that I shouldn't worry about it. While my husband was at work, I took the opportunity to go back to our old house to collect my belongings. The place felt strangely hollow and abandoned, mirroring the emptiness inside me. But Elizabeth's support extended far beyond just providing shelter. She connected me with a lawyer who had previously helped her, which solidified my decision to file for divorce. The lawyer was encouraging, and with each visit to the hospital confirming my baby's health, my resolve strengthened. One day, as I was leaving the hospital, my heart sank at the sight of my husband John, waiting for me. Panic set in, and despite my attempts to leave quickly, my pregnancy slowed me down. He confronted me, demanding answers about the lawyer and our new living arrangement. Gripping my arm tightly, stating my ground, I insisted that any discussions about divorce, compensation, or child support should be conducted through my lawyer. I refused to go home with him. Just then, a young woman named Lisa intervened. She introduced herself and stepped protectively in front of me, her tense interaction with John revealing an underlying strain. Lisa firmly told him that he couldn't force me to leave against my will. Her bold stance was a stark contrast to my vulnerability, providing an unexpected layer of support when I needed it most. Lisa's firm resolve, coupled with her threat to call the police, dramatically shifted the dynamics of the situation, giving me the much-needed boost of hope and courage to stand my ground. Seeing her determination, John quickly retreated, fear evident in his hurried exit. Overwhelmed with relief, my knees nearly gave way beneath me. Lisa promptly came over to support me, asking with genuine concern, "Are you okay?" I apologized, feeling a rush of emotions, but she brushed it off and immediately hailed a taxi to ensure I got home safely. Despite my protests about troubling her, she reassured me it was no bother at all. When I shared my address with her, she was surprised to discover that I lived just below her. What a serendipitous twist that we were neighbors. Lisa, always cheerful and kind, revealed that she was a new employee at John's workplace. She had reported his inappropriate conduct, which had resulted in him being stripped of his mentorship role. John had a history of insensitivity, especially towards female colleagues, often making inappropriate remarks about personal matters such as menstruation and marriage. Lisa confided that the issues with John extended beyond professional boundaries, something I had painfully experienced during my pregnancy. In the 2 weeks since our encounter, Lisa and I had grown close, frequently sharing meals and conversations. She informed me that due to multiple complaints, John had been reassigned to a subsidiary of the company. Intriguingly, Lisa turned out to be the daughter of Elizabeth, the very Elizabeth who owned the apartment I was now living in. I was staying in the apartment, reflecting on how John had often boastfully mentioned managing Elizabeth's account, only to face a demotion due to his poor conduct. Elizabeth had been instrumental in holding him accountable for his actions at work and towards me. Lisa, motivated by her desire to address workplace issues based on her own merits, acted upon realizing my connection to her mother. Elizabeth encouraged Lisa to take proactive steps, emphasizing the importance of standing up against inappropriate behavior in any environment. This revelation deepened the bond between us, as we both appreciated the strength and support stemming from our shared experiences. With John's diminished role and increased responsibilities at work affecting his income, he found himself in a drastically altered position. Elizabeth, leveraging her extensive experience, counseled me to stand firm and not succumb to John's attempts to elicit sympathy. This guidance proved invaluable as I moved forward with my decision to divorce him. Despite John's attempts to reach out through our lawyer, sharing tales of his difficult job situation and expressing longing and apologies, I remained resolute, staunchly supported by Elizabeth. Ultimately, John had no option but to accept the divorce and agree to the terms, which included child support and compensation. As I navigated this new chapter, another challenge arose with my in-laws, particularly my father-in-law, who was overly enthusiastic about the baby being a boy. I sensed the undercurrents of impending issues, and soon enough, my in-laws made their intentions clear. One day, as I was leaving the house, my father-in-law confronted me aggressively, grabbing my arm and declaring that once the baby was born, I must relinquish him to the family, claiming the baby was the rightful heir. Despite my attempts to break free, his grip was unyielding. At that moment, Lisa's commanding voice cut through the tension. With her expertise in judo, skills honed to protect herself and her mother during tough times, she intervened swiftly, employing a maneuver to release me from his hold. Lisa, a nationally recognized judoka, sternly reprimanded my father-in-law for his disregard of John's behavior and his intrusive demands on my life. She staunchly defended my right to a fresh start and made it clear that any further meddling was unacceptable. Just then, the sound of approaching sirens signaled that help was on the way. Lisa had prudently called the police before stepping in to assist me. My mother-in-law, who had been observing from a nearby car, remained silent as the police arrived and detained both her and my father-in-law. The arrest of my father-in-law was a pivotal moment, prompting my mother-in-law to reflect and ultimately decide to divorce him, signaling a significant shift in my tumultuous family relations. When John tried to convince his mother to let him accompany her to start anew in the countryside, she firmly refused, communicating through the lawyer to apologize for her previous actions and leaving some money as a gesture of goodwill. Elizabeth helped me understand that such gestures often stem from a desire for forgiveness and an intention to contribute to my son's future, especially after a significant life change like leaving a marriage. Although I was surprised by her turnaround, given her prior behavior, I appreciated her efforts to make amends. Once the divorce was finalized, I welcomed a healthy baby boy into the world, choosing solitude over a troubled life with John. My mother-in-law moved to the countryside, while when my father-in-law was released from custody, he discovered that she had demolished their house before leaving. With nowhere else to go, he moved in with John, compounding their issues and eventually leading to John's resignation due to his tarnished reputation. Despite these upheavals, child support payments were consistently handled, likely facilitated by Elizabeth and the lawyer. Lisa's courage and integrity at work did not go unnoticed. She was promoted to project leader, earning the respect and admiration of her peers. Elizabeth's various initiatives, including projects for women-only properties and housing for foreigners, continued to thrive. As for me, once my son was old enough, I planned to rejoin the workforce. Elizabeth graciously offered me a position at a new high-end cosmetics store she was launching. Both Elizabeth and Lisa continued to be a great source of support, showing immense affection for my son and treating him as if he were Elizabeth's grandchild. Lisa also made time to visit us regularly. Their unwavering strength and kindness were not only a comfort during my most challenging times, but also a powerful example of the resilience and protectiveness I aspire to embody for my son. Inspired by these remarkable women, I was determined to provide the same level of strength and protection for my son as they had for me. I've decided to buy a luxury car. Honestly, it's more than I need, but my parents are also considering a new vehicle, and this one might be perfect for them. Since marrying Anthony, I've noticed some changes in his behavior. He's become more self-absorbed and, surprisingly, even a bit envious of the nice car my parents gifted me. I'm starting to feel fed up. My name is Emma, and I'm 29 years old. I met Anthony back in college, and we've been married for 2 years. Anthony's a socialite, charismatic and well-liked, while I'm more reserved with a close-knit group of friends. Our relationship started off unexpectedly. It grew through shared classes and study groups. His interest took me by surprise, and when he asked me out, I was thrilled and accepted right away. That was the beginning of our journey together. Anthony's charm, relaxed nature, and dedication to his studies drew me to him. He was surrounded by friends and knew several stylish, attractive women, so I figured he'd have no trouble finding the girlfriend if he wanted. Once I asked him nervously if he really thought I was the one for him. His reaction threw me off. He looked surprised and asked why I would ask that. Feeling insecure, I just wanted reassurance, but after a thoughtful pause, he simply said he felt comfortable with me. It wasn't the heartfelt response I had hoped for, and before I could process it, he became engrossed in his phone. Not wanting to push the issue, I changed the subject and apologized, though the doubt lingered. On the surface, our relationship seemed fine. We graduated, got married, and settled into a condo. I landed a stable job while Anthony continued with graduate school and worked part-time. When I shared news of our engagement with my mom, she was ecstatic, admitting she'd started to wonder when I'd introduce a boyfriend. I felt a little guilty for not telling them about Anthony sooner, but my mom, knowing my independent nature, was just glad I had someone who cared about me. My parents have always been my role models. Like us, they met in college and have maintained a deep love and respect over the years. My dad climbed the corporate ladder while my mom followed her passion for cooking, eventually teaching culinary classes. They've always honored each other's independence and supported each other's dreams, and I want a marriage as nurturing and supportive as theirs. Growing up in a financially comfortable family, I learned the importance of independence early on. This influenced my choice not to follow Anthony into graduate school. I wanted to carve my own path. My dream has always been simple yet meaningful, to create a family environment as warm as the one I was raised in, complete with a loving marriage and perhaps children someday. But as we settled into married life, things started to change. Anthony's financial contributions were minimal while he focused on his studies and part-time job. One day, I brought up the idea of him contributing a bit more towards our expenses. His response was dismissive. "I do contribute, Emma. Didn't we agree you'd cover the living expenses when we moved in?" His words left me uneasy. Anthony's dream of becoming a professor was clear, and I admired his dedication. But as he pursued his career, I felt increasingly burdened by our finances. Despite my assurances that I could manage with my stable income, his curt retort made me wonder if we were truly working as a team. When I first brought it up, I stammered, giving a feeble agreement, unsure how to push back. He sighed heavily. "You wouldn't understand, Emma. Being a graduate student is expensive." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Oh, and I need $26,000 for a research trip. Can you lend it to me? I'll pay you back." His requests for money became more frequent, and the tension in our relationship steadily grew. Anthony often stayed out late, leaving me alone with meals that went cold and unanswered phone calls. Yet whenever he returned, his mood was upbeat. He'd casually compliment my cooking or suggest spontaneous plans, making me feel valued for a moment. These fleeting gestures of kindness gave me brief glimpses of the joyful marriage I longed for, pushing me to avoid the deeper issues between us. But despite my efforts, feelings of loneliness and anxiety became my constant companions, caught in a cycle of temporary happiness followed by long periods of isolation. I struggled to confide in anyone about my feelings, especially my parents who seemed so happy for us. But they likely sensed that something was off. After a long time away, I visited them, and my father suggested I stay for dinner. My mom went all out, cooking a meal filled with warmth and welcome. During dinner, my father mentioned that Aunt Margaret had recently visited. "She was asking about you," he said, describing her as spirited, ambitious, and fiercely independent, the very traits that define her. "I'll reach out to her soon." "Thanks, Dad," I replied, feeling their gentle encouragement to reconnect with family. My father shared fond memories of Margaret, recalling how she often joked that Anthony had whisked me away. Margaret, who had never planned to marry herself, had always been more of a mentor than just an aunt. I could talk to her about things too complex to bring up with my parents, and she always understood me deeply, providing advice and support whenever I was navigating new chapters in my life. Though I'd been hesitant to open up to Margaret about my relationship with Anthony, my visit to my parents sparked a desire to reach out to her. A few days later, we met at a cozy cafe. Margaret, ever so stylish, greeted me with a warm look and offered a bit of fashion advice. Marriage is more than just the ceremony, Emma, she said, smiling as she sipped her tea. It's important to feel confident and keep up with yourself. Your appearance says a lot about how you feel. Take care of it. In that moment, I realized I'd been neglecting my interests and quickly apologized for losing touch. Margaret chuckled, saying, "That's just like you, Emma. It's good to be earnest, but your timidity likely comes from not stepping out enough." Hearing about Anthony had made her happy. She thought I was finally ready to move forward. We hadn't spent a day just relaxing together in such a long time, and the beautiful weather made our outing even more delightful. As we settled on the cafe's sunny terrace, I felt at ease enough to open up about my concerns with Anthony. At first, I thought that even someone as reserved as I am could make things work with him, but recently, I was beginning to have doubts. Margaret listened quietly, her gentle nods showing empathy. When I finished, she softly asked, "Have you shared any of this with your parents, Emma?" "No," I admitted. "I was hesitant to tell even you today. I didn't want to seem vulnerable. I felt like I needed to handle this on my own to prove my independence. If my parents knew, they'd probably insist I move back home." Margaret respected my choice to manage things alone but offered reassurance. "If you ever need help, I'm here for you, Emma. I'll support you no matter what." About a month later, my mom called, casually saying, "Whenever you're free, could you drop by? Nothing urgent." Since I had the next day off, I decided to visit. As I approached their house, I noticed a new car in the driveway. I gasped, excitement bubbling up. "Is this car new, Dad? Did you just buy it? Can I take it for a spin?" With a warm smile, my dad reassured me, "This car is yours, Emma. Use it however you like. We thought it would be useful." My mom added softly, "We remembered how much you liked this model when you saw it in an ad. We thought it might cheer you up, especially since you've been going through a rough patch." Their thoughtful gesture, a shiny new SUV from a renowned international brand, filled me with an overwhelming sense of support and reminded me that, no matter how hard things got, I always had a place to come home to. Dad even arranged a parking spot near my condo. I was deeply moved by their generosity. I laughed in disbelief, struggling to comprehend their kindness. Later, as I drove downtown, I pulled out the car keys and pressed the button, watching the SUV's lights flash brightly. That's when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "What's with the new car?" Anthony asked. I turned, stunned to see my husband, who had been absent for ages. His sudden appearance left me speechless. He looked at the car, a smug grin spreading across his face. "A gift from your parents?" Every time I faced Anthony, words seemed to catch in my throat, but I was exhausted from feeling small. "Anthony, don't you care anymore? Do you even care about me?" I managed, my voice trembling but brimming with newfound courage. His response was sharp and dismissive. "Are you just realizing this now? Did you really think I loved you all this time? It's ridiculous how hopeful you are." His mocking laughter stung, and something within me snapped. "Then why did you marry me?" I shot back, louder than intended. Anthony's expression darkened, his voice cold and blunt. "Oh, so you're going to be that blunt? Marrying you was just convenient. And now, what? You want the car too? It's wasted on you." I was stunned by the harshness of his words. Seemingly unfazed, he added with chilling indifference, "We're getting a divorce. And without me, you'll never find another man. Think about that." With that, he turned and left without a second glance, leaving me feeling shattered yet oddly resolute. Sitting in the driver's seat, I fought to calm myself, my mind racing. After a few days of reflection and a heartfelt conversation with Aunt Margaret, I agreed to the divorce and moved back in with my parents, who welcomed me with open arms. Life felt peaceful again, if only for a while. But that peace was short-lived. One afternoon, Anthony appeared at my parents' house, his parents in tow. They all settled stiffly into the living room, and Anthony's father spoke first, his tone stern. "We're here to discuss our son's divorce." As the conversation began to unfold, I felt a surge of determination rise within me. This time, I wouldn't be silenced. "If you don't agree to the divorce," I started, my voice steady, "then let me make myself clear." I warned Anthony that I would leverage Brian's connections at the university to jeopardize his future. It wouldn't take much to tarnish the career of a junior registrar if their daughter filed a complaint. Anthony, who suddenly seemed more concerned, was taken aback by my assertiveness. He viewed my tactics as aggressive and intimidating. His father vehemently argued, "We could easily contest the divorce, Emma. Beneath her simple appearance, she's manipulative and greedy. Poor Anthony. I've heard she even paid him to stay away. She must have entertained other men. We should take this to family court and claim that Anthony was coerced into this divorce. But if Emma were to make a genuine apology, perhaps things could be different. Just then, Aunt Margaret suggested that relinquishing the SUV might help smooth things over. Anthony and his parents listened quietly, absorbing his father's protests. At that moment, the doorbell rang. My mom answered it, and Aunt Margaret walked in, her presence instantly shifting the atmosphere. "Sorry I'm late," she said, joining the tense gathering. Anthony's family, who had only met her once at my wedding, looked surprised. "What are you doing here?" Anthony's mother exclaimed, visibly annoyed. "It's rude to barge in like this. We're in the middle of something." Unfazed, Margaret replied, "You've heard about Anthony's divorce, haven't you?" "How would an outsider like you know about this?" Anthony's mother challenged. Margaret continued calmly, "I was informed by my brother earlier. I couldn't miss such an important moment for my niece." Anthony's mother shot back, "You're probably here to stop the divorce or for money. Are you still going to make accusations after seeing this?" Without missing a beat, Margaret pulled a stack of documents from her bag and spread them out on the table for everyone to see. "I hired a private detective to look into this," she revealed. "It turns out Anthony has been cheating on Emma with multiple women. He hardly came home because of it, taking advantage of Emma's kindness and even asking her for money." The revelation left everyone in stunned silence, and the tone of the meeting shifted dramatically as they processed the weight of Margaret's findings. I was deeply immersed in my university research, so when I finally made it home, we spent quality time together, sharing meals and exploring the world outside. To outsiders, we appeared like any other married couple. "Say something, Emma," Anthony pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. "You don't need to defend yourself," his father quickly reassured him, eager to regain control of the situation. Margaret's unexpected intervention had illuminated the harsh reality of my troubled marriage, revealing Anthony's deceit and the manipulation I had endured. This new information forced everyone, especially Anthony's parents, to reconsider their approach to the divorce negotiations. "It's not your fault," Anthony's mother hastily added, clutching the documents suspiciously. "These must be fabricated. Our Anthony would never do such things. He's a kind, outstanding son." "Kind to his parents, maybe," Aunt Margaret interjected sharply, her calm demeanor belying her evident resolve. She pulled out a photograph from the stack of documents. "I was at a hotel for a business meeting recently and saw Anthony there with another woman, looking quite cozy. I had the detective investigate Anthony as well, and the results confirmed my suspicions." Anthony's mother's face drained of color as she grabbed the documents to examine them closely. "What is this, Anthony? How long has this been going on? These are all lies, aren't they?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Anthony tried to snatch the documents back, denying everything, but it was too late. The seeds of doubt had been sown. "You've been cheating on me. The car you wanted so badly was for her, wasn't it?" his mother accused, her voice cracking under the strain. No matter how much Anthony tried to soothe her, his mother was inconsolable. She stormed out of the house, tears streaming down her face, with Anthony stumbling after her, trying to explain. Amidst the chaos, he blurted out, "Hey, wait, what about me?" As he followed her, bewildered, the rest of us were left in stunned silence. Aunt Margaret, however, wore a satisfied smile and gave me a knowing wink. It was clear she had anticipated this dramatic turn of events and the revelations that would follow. After the tumultuous scene, Aunt Margaret confided in me that Anthony's parents had eventually separated. "You won't fall for such a terrible man again," she assured me, her tone protective yet empowering. "Let's focus on making you even more resilient. I'll teach you everything I know about grooming and self-care." Despite her busy schedule, Aunt Margaret made time for me, taking me out for meals and shopping trips. During this period, I absorbed a great deal from her, gaining a new perspective on self-care and confidence. Her guidance not only helped heal my wounds but also equipped me with the tools to build a stronger, more confident self. A year after my divorce, I made a life-altering decision to enroll in graduate school. This period marked a time of intense personal growth and transformation. One day, while waiting at a street intersection, I heard my name being called. I turned around to see Anthony, my ex-husband. He seemed genuinely surprised by my appearance and remarked on how much I had changed. At first glance, I barely recognized him. The man who once knew me as his unremarkable ex-wife now saw a woman who had blossomed into confidence and beauty. Meanwhile, Anthony's life had taken a sharp decline following his parents' very public and scandalous divorce. He had dropped out of graduate school after Kyle and Karen withdrew their financial support amidst the turmoil he had caused. Struggling to cover his tuition and living expenses, the carefree lifestyle he once enjoyed had become a distant memory. The women who had once shown interest in him had moved on, and his former social status had seemingly evaporated overnight. As Anthony was about to suggest we catch up, Jonathan, the man I was currently dating, approached us, his timing perfect and signaling a clear demarcation between my past and the new chapter I was embarking on, one that no longer included Anthony. Nearby, a group of women couldn't help but admire Jonathan, wondering aloud if he was a model. Observing my brief exchange with Anthony, Jonathan gave him a polite nod and said, "It's okay, we're done here. Let's go," taking my hand confidently. Anthony remained rooted to the spot, visibly shocked as Jonathan and continued on our way. My gaze stayed fixed ahead, concentrating on the road and the bright prospects that lay before us. I didn't glance back even once as we departed. When my grandmother passed away, I was left with a profound emptiness, a hollow space in my heart that felt as if it could never be filled. She'd been my one constant, the person who raised me after my parents left, both too caught up in their own lives to take care of a child. My grandmother stepped in, and together we made a home in her beautiful house on Willow Lane, a sprawling historic estate that was as warm as she was. She filled the house with love, laughter, and a deep, enduring resilience. And when she left it to me, her only granddaughter. I inherited the house on Willow Lane, along with a lifetime of her memories and her undying spirit. It felt like she was passing me a torch, entrusting me with everything she had built, with every story she had shared. In that house, I felt I still had her, that her love was stitched into every corner, every creak of the floorboards, every echo in the empty hallways. But along with the house, a storm was brewing, a storm I hadn't seen coming. Moving into the house alone was like stepping into another life. I'd lived there as a child, but returning as an adult, I was now responsible for it, for preserving it as my grandmother would have wanted. I spent the first few days walking through each room, feeling her presence everywhere. Each room held its own stories, from the kitchen where she used to bake the most wonderful pies to the library where she spent hours reading her favorite books. This house, to anyone else, was just a structure, but to me, it was her legacy. A piece of her I could keep forever. It wasn't long before Ethan began to show signs of interest. We'd been dating for a while, and he had always been charming, thoughtful, and attentive. His sudden fascination with the house felt, at first, like a natural extension of his curiosity about me. But soon his questions about my grandmother's house took on a different tone, a tone that felt more possessive than endearing. I brushed it off, thinking I was reading too much into things. It was only natural, I told myself. Ethan was in real estate after all, and perhaps he just saw the house as an investment, a valuable asset. But the part of me that was raised by my grandmother, the part of me that held the house sacred, felt a pang of unease. One evening, I found him in the study, flipping through some of my grandmother's documents. He didn't seem to notice me at first. His eyes scanned the pages with such intensity that for a moment, he didn't even hear me approach. "Ethan? What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He looked up, almost startled. "Oh, Lena, just curious. You know, it's an incredible property. You must realize what an asset you've inherited here, right?" The way he said it, an asset, sent a shiver through me. This wasn't just an asset. This was my grandmother's home. But I forced a smile and nodded, trying to brush off the strange feeling brewing in my chest. After all, this was Ethan. My Ethan, the person who'd been there through so many ups and downs. I reminded myself that I was being paranoid. But that was just the beginning. As the weeks went on, Ethan began bringing his family around more often. I'd met them a few times, of course, during holidays or birthdays, but they'd never taken much interest in me before. Now, though, they were always there, always admiring the house, always lingering just a little too long. It was Helen, his mother, who made her intentions the clearest. "You've really inherited a gem, Lena," she said one evening as she gazed around the living room with barely concealed greed. Her voice dripped with thinly veiled envy, a hunger I couldn't ignore. She ran her hand over the mantel, examining the family photos I had placed there. My grandmother's legacy, her love for her home and family encapsulated in each frame. I felt a surge of protectiveness rise within me. It's more than a house to me, Helen. It's everything my grandmother worked for. It's her memory, her life. Helen looked at me, her expression softening just a fraction, but her eyes held a glint of something darker. Of course, dear, she murmured, but I could tell she didn't understand, or worse, she didn't care. From then on, they came around almost every weekend, lingering longer each time. I find Helen snooping through the upstairs rooms, just admiring the craftsmanship, she'd say. Abby, Ethan's sister, would sit in the kitchen, eyeing the china that had belonged to my grandmother as if mentally cataloging each piece. It made my skin crawl. The invasion happened so abruptly that I barely had time to react. One afternoon, I returned from running errands to find Helen and Abby in the living room, flipping through a folder of paperwork. The sight of them sitting there, acting as if they owned the place, made me feel nauseous. Ethan stood by the doorway, a look of resignation on his face. He looked down when I met his eyes, and I knew immediately that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Lena, Helen said in a voice that was all too calm, we've come to an arrangement. It's for the best, really. You're young, and maintaining a house like this, well, it's a big responsibility. We've discussed it with Ethan, and we believe that transferring the house to his name would be in everyone's best interest. I was stunned, words failing me. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. This was my home, my grandmother's legacy, and here they were, talking as if they had the right to take it from me. Are you serious? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. You can't just take my home. Abby smirked, a look of triumph flashing in her eyes. Oh, but we're family, Lena. We're just here to help. Think of this as consolidation. My hands trembled as I looked at Ethan, hoping he would defend me, that he would put a stop to this madness. But he said nothing, his silence louder than any betrayal. That night, after they finally left, I locked every door and sat in a living room. The paperwork they'd shoved into my hands scattered around me like a cruel joke. I felt a sense of helplessness wash over me, a crushing wave of despair. How could they do this to me? How could Ethan allow this? I thought I knew him. I thought I could trust him. But I couldn't sit idly by and let them take everything my grandmother had worked for. I knew I had to fight back. She wouldn't have wanted me to give up without a battle. The next morning, I called a lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, an old family friend who had helped my grandmother with her estate. He listened patiently as I told him everything, his voice calm and reassuring when he finally spoke. Lena, don't worry. If you have the documentation of ownership, we can fight this. It's not as simple as they're making it out to be. Gather every piece of paperwork you have, wills, deeds, anything that proves the house is yours. His words ignited a small spark of hope in me. I spent days poring over every file, every letter, every scrap of paper that held even a hint of my grandmother's claim to this house. I found old property deeds, tax records, and most importantly, her will, explicitly stating that the house was to be mine. Every document I gathered felt like a shield, each page adding to my armor. The first court hearing was surreal. I sat across from Helen and Abby, their smug smiles taunting me as if they were certain they'd win. Ethan was there too, but he didn't even look at me. His face was a mask of indifference, his once warm eyes cold and distant. I presented my case, my hands shaking as I spoke about my grandmother's wishes, about how this house was her legacy, about how it was more than just a property, it was my home. The judge listened intently, and at the end of it all, I saw a flicker of understanding in his gaze. He granted me a temporary restraining order, barring them from the property. The relief was overwhelming, but I knew this was only the beginning. After the restraining order was issued, things quieted down for a short while. But Ethan's family wasn't done. They started showing up outside the house, lurking just beyond the property line, sometimes shouting insults or threats, their anger growing with each passing day. One evening, I heard a loud banging on the front door. I opened it cautiously, only to find Helen standing there, her face twisted in rage. You think you've won, Lena? She spat, her voice shaking with fury. You don't deserve that house. It should be ours. You're just a selfish, ungrateful child. Her words stung, but I refused to back down. I stood tall, my voice steady as I replied, "This house is my grandmother's legacy. It's my home, and you're not welcome here." After months of fighting, of late-night research, and seemingly endless court appearances, the legal battle finally came to an end. The judge ruled in my favor, confirming my sole ownership of the property and barring Ethan's family from ever coming near it again. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was indescribable. The house was finally mine, free from their grasp, from their greed. As I walked through each room, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just a house, it was a testament to my strength, to my resilience, to everything my grandmother had taught me. Slowly, I redecorated, breathing new life into the home. I painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, filled it with new memories, new hopes. And as I stood in the living room, looking out over the willow trees that lined the yard, I felt her presence beside me, proud and unwavering. In that moment, I knew I had done her proud. I had protected her legacy, and in doing so, I had found my own strength. This was my home, and it always would be. I remember a time when I felt truly content with my life, earning a decent income and managing things well. That sense of stability was shattered one day when my credit card company called to alert me about a shocking $91,000 charge that I didn't recognize at all. Panic set in as I immediately halted the payment. At the same time, my husband Jason, who was traveling, kept calling me. Despite the chaos swirling around me, I took charge of the situation. At 31, I had stepped into a managerial role at my company, while Jason, my college sweetheart, was also 31, and we had been happily married for 2 years. While many of our friends chose to leave their jobs after getting married, I chose to stay in mine, earning more than Jason, which occasionally made me worry about our future, especially considering the instability of his income. We maintained our financial independence, managing our own money and sharing household expenses equally. This arrangement gave me the freedom to spend my leftover income as I pleased, a situation I usually found satisfying since we both worked and our life together felt harmonious. However, recently, while riding home on the train, I had a nagging feeling that I might have overspent a bit. As I glanced at a debit alert on my phone, I thought about checking for any unused subscriptions that might still be charging me. But that thought quickly faded as I struggled to remember the password to my credit card portal. Finding the motivation to sort this out was proving tough, especially since reaching the help center felt like an uphill battle. They were only available from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, exactly when most working people are busy. The long wait times during lunch hours didn't help either. Still, I felt a small sense of reassurance knowing that if there were significant issues, like a charge over $40,000, the call center would reach out to me. This reliance on the system made me a bit complacent about contacting them myself. Meanwhile, online shopping became a brief escape from work-related stresses. When I opened a newly delivered package, a surge of excitement washed over me, but it quickly faded as I stepped into our living room. The sight that greeted me instantly shifted my mood from good to bad. Socks scattered on the floor, empty cans littering the table, and a random phone and sweater thrown carelessly on the couch. There was Jason, lounging in his sweatshirt, seemingly oblivious to the mess. His tendency to leave things in disarray often felt like he was deliberately contributing to the chaos at home. I aimed my phone at the couch and said, half joking, half exasperated, "Hey, socks and empty cans. That's what I come home to? It's not that hard to clean up a bit or even make dinner if you're home before me." He coolly replied, "If you get home early, why don't you clean the house? Don't be so mad about it." His words stung a bit. I was tired too when I got home, I retorted, trying to keep my tone light but firm. "If you're not going to help clean, maybe you should consider whether you prefer working or doing chores." "Please just drop it," he said, not once but twice, signaling his annoyance without really understanding the weight of my words. I shot him a stern look, but he was too engrossed in his phone to notice my frustration. It felt unfair that I was shouldering a heavier load of chores on top of my work responsibilities. Was I being unreasonable for feeling this way? I wasn't sure what to think, but I feared that confronting him might only push Jason to become more indifferent about the upkeep of our home. Surprisingly, after our exchange, something changed. My husband started coming home late, even on days when I arrived early. It seemed he had decided to put in extra hours at work, perhaps as a way to address the imbalance in our responsibilities. On a particularly good day, I threw myself into my chores with more energy than usual. Jason had been really busy lately, which meant the housekeeping duties had mostly fallen on me. I hadn't given it much thought until I found myself cleaning his room, a place he hadn't tidied up in quite some time. As I entered, I was met with the familiar sight of empty bottles and cans strewn everywhere, even on the bed. Amid the clutter, something caught my eye, a package, elegantly wrapped in gift paper, lying quietly on the floor. Leaning in closer, I recognized the branding. It was from my favorite store. A flicker of excitement surged through me as I remembered my birthday was just around the corner. Could this be a surprise gift from Jason? Despite my curiosity, I decided to respect the surprise and left the package untouched. However, as my birthday arrived, the gift never materialized. As the day progressed, I casually asked Jason, "Do you know what today is?" "Oh, right, it's your birthday," he replied nonchalantly. "Did you forget?" I pressed, hoping for a hint about the surprise I had seen earlier. "No, I remember," he said. "Aren't you happy with what I gave you last year? You know you're old enough not to need constant surprises." His words, so casually delivered, stung. He turned and went back to his room, leaving me puzzled and hurt. That mysterious box had sparked a glimmer of hope, but now it just filled me with unease. Then, just when I thought the day couldn't get any stranger, he announced, "I've got to go on a work trip abroad next week." This news was unexpected, a business trip to another country. I repeated, incredulous, "Since when does your job involve international travel? You've never even been on a business trip outside the state." He simply replied, "They just gave me this assignment." The whole situation felt increasingly strange. What was really going on? I had been feeling quite accomplished lately and believed I deserved some recognition. "You should trust me," my husband had said, but his words were hard to take seriously after discovering that mysterious gift-wrapped box in his room just before he left for his so-called business trip. After waving him off that early morning, my curiosity got the better of me. I searched under the bed where I had seen the box, but it was gone. Doubts began to gnaw at me. This wasn't just a regular business trip, was it? With that uneasy thought lingering, I dragged myself to work, but focusing was nearly impossible. Several times, my hands stopped moving as my mind replayed recent events over and over. "Hey, are you okay? You seem out of it today," a coworker inquired. "Oh yeah, I just didn't get enough sleep," I replied, trying to brush it off with a light-hearted excuse. Just then, my phone vibrated sharply, displaying a strange number on the screen. Normally, I would ignore such calls, but something inside me urged me to answer this time. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, stepping outside to talk. It was the credit card company's call center on the line. As I listened, a flurry of thoughts raced through my mind about my husband, our recent issues, and the necessity of sharing my password. Then the representative's words cut through my confusion. "This is from our debt protection service. It seems there has been a charge exceeding $40,000 on your account," the voice explained calmly. I was stunned, a mix of disbelief and concern washing over me. What on earth was going on? The conversation intensified when she dropped another bombshell. "Yes, there was a charge for $91,000. "That's impossible. Wait a second." I gasped, my heart racing, and dashed back to my desk, rifling through my wallet only to discover that my credit card was missing. That was the card I had intended to bring with me. "Pardon me, can you please halt that transaction?" I asked urgently, the phone pressed tightly against my ear. "Yes, it's still pending, so we can stop it," the operator assured me. A wave of relief washed over me. "And please, can you handle the stolen card issue immediately?" "I don't have it with me," I added. "Yes, sir, I'll take care of it right away," she responded. Although the situation was partially resolved, the adrenaline continued to course through my veins. I hung up, my heart still pounding. "I'm sorry, but I'm not in the right state to work. I need to leave early. It seems my credit card was stolen and almost misused, and I have a lot to sort out," I explained to my boss, who understood and allowed me to leave. I caught the train quickly, and as I checked my phone, I saw countless missed calls from my husband. It felt as though he was trying to confess something. I rushed home, threw off my shoes, dropped my bag, and headed straight for my husband's office. His desk was cluttered, but what caught my eye was his search history: luxury cruises and travel plans for two. These were definitely not work-related, and I hadn't been invited to any such event. The so-called business trip was clearly a cover for something else. My heart sank as I grasped the implications. Scrolling through my old emails for any clues, I noticed a name that stood out. Billy, what the heck is this? I muttered, my anger rising. I wanted to slam the keyboard in frustration, but instead, I forced myself to look for concrete proof of whatever was happening. My phone kept ringing incessantly as I pieced everything together. Oh my God, just stop, I groaned, overwhelmed by the betrayal and chaos unfolding before me. In the turmoil, I decided to use the password given by the call center to check my credit card transaction history. I logged into my account and began scrolling through the records, my disbelief growing with each entry. There it was, a transaction for an expensive handbag that caught my eye. The pieces suddenly clicked. Jason had used my credit card to indulge his mistress, Olivia, and even funded a so-called business trip abroad. The realization left me stunned. I had ignored several calls, but now, gathering all my courage, I finally answered the phone. You finally picked up. I tried so many times, Jason said, his voice anxious. He immediately launched into a discussion about the credit card. Who's the card for? I asked pointedly. He hesitated before responding. You mean whose card? Well, it's easier to use a card than cash abroad, especially on work trips. Work trips? Or do you mean the luxury cruise and getaway with Olivia? I countered sharply. He tried to deflect. Why are you asking about the cruise? That was for business entertainment, a fun time. And was the designer bag for Olivia? Are you seriously trying to justify this by pretending you don't know what's going on? I pressed, my voice steady but filled with pain. My husband faltered, the weight of the confrontation sinking in. I understand, he repeated, desperation lacing his voice as he grasped for excuses. I know everything, I stated clearly. You tried to spend $91,000 on a luxury cruise and a vacation package for couples. You've been using my credit card to lavish Olivia with gifts. After a pause, he finally admitted, I'm sorry, I cheated. I'm sorry, but I can't come home until you reactivate the credit card. His plea hung in the air, absurd and almost pitiful. Do you really think an apology and admission are enough to make all of this go away? I asked, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on me. The conversation had shifted irrevocably from mundane marital grievances to a stark, painful reckoning. Feeling utterly betrayed, I told my husband, please spend the rest of your life at your resort, and hung up before he could respond. Almost immediately, my phone began buzzing nonstop. The incessant ringing drove me to the edge, prompting me to turn off the device to escape the noise. Soon after, an email notification popped up, informing me that my husband's return flight was scheduled for noon, 5 days later. I seized this opportunity to get my affairs in order, determined to resolve everything before he set foot back home. The next day, I began clearing out all his belongings from the house. By the second day, I had gathered the courage to tell my in-laws about everything that had happened, showing them the proof of his infidelity and financial misdeeds. They were shocked and deeply apologetic. By the end of our conversation, they agreed to support me in pursuing a divorce, promising to ensure I would receive $2 million in alimony and vowing to recover the funds my husband had frivolously spent. As the day of my husband's return approached, I received a call from my in-laws in the early evening, confirming they had safely filed the divorce papers. Surprisingly, my soon-to-be ex-husband had only taken a credit card with him, leaving our other finances untouched. However, the woman he was with had given him $91,000. Enraged by the unfolding events, she changed her flight, departing for Singapore before him without his knowledge. I couldn't help but wonder why she hadn't just taken his plane ticket and visa, leaving him stranded. While pondering this, I learned from my in-laws that when my ex-husband returned to Singapore, he found the house empty and his connection to me severed, with all his calls going straight to voicemail. In a desperate attempt to find refuge, he went to my in-laws' house, where he faced serious repercussions for his actions. After everything that had unfolded, the final step was filing the divorce papers. My ex-husband had dug himself deeper into trouble, and it didn't stop with our separation. The woman he had been seeing was now demanding he return the $91,000 she had given him. My in-laws told me that after he repaid her, they imposed strict conditions on him, almost as if he were back in high school. He was essentially under house arrest with a 15-hour curfew and his every move monitored by his own family, ensuring he paid off all the money he owed. Amidst all this, I took legal action myself, filing a $115,000 claim against the other woman involved in the affair. With help from my in-laws, I gathered the necessary information to pursue her financially. Once I did, it felt like the last piece of this painful puzzle was finally falling into place. It was a long and exhausting process, but when the claim went through, I felt a sense of closure. The legal matters had been resolved, and it was time for me to focus on moving forward. The next day at work, my colleagues and bosses welcomed me back with surprising warmth and concern. Many of them had heard about my situation, and their kindness was palpable. "Are you okay? If you want to talk about anything, I'm here," one of my colleagues offered gently. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone. I replied with a grateful smile, "Thank you, I'm doing all right. Just trying to get back into the swing of things. Maybe we can grab a drink after work. I'd appreciate the company." It felt good to make plans and look forward to simple pleasures like a night out with friends. That evening, as we gathered at a local bar, the camaraderie was soothing. We shared stories and laughs, and although the shadow of recent events lingered, it was overshadowed by the immediate warmth of friendly faces. With each sip of my beer, the bitterness of the past few months began to dissolve slightly. I poured out my heart about the ordeal, and my colleagues listened empathetically. "I'm just looking forward to putting all of this behind me," I confessed as the evening wound down. "I think I'm ready to focus on the positives that the future holds." They raised their glasses in silent acknowledgement of my resilience. "To new beginnings," they echoed. As I left the bar that night, a sense of closure mingled with newfound hope. The support of my work community had boosted my spirits, and I felt a deep appreciation for their presence in my life. It reminded me that even in the aftermath of betrayal and heartache, the kindness of others could light the way forward. Looking ahead, I felt a cautious optimism. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still mine to shape. With the legal matters settled and my boundaries firmly redrawn, I was slowly rebuilding a sense of normalcy. The path ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but I felt prepared to face them, bolstered by the support of friends and a renewed sense of self. Indeed, it seemed that better days were on the horizon.